Okay, 10 o'clock. Good morning, all. Good afternoon. Good evening to those to whom it applies. Welcome to the January 2026 meeting of FMDiSC. We're glad to see all of you. I'm Lynn Allen. I'm a member of the board, and I'm coordinating this meeting. We're going to be having a panel discussion about AI ethics. You can see the poll there. Get your answers in. It's going to close soon, and we'll have the results. We're welcoming Kate Waldhauser of Violet Beacon, and I'm sure there's a story behind that name. Katherine Russell of Positive Prompt Tech, and Lane and Sara Severson from Soliant Consulting. Chris Moyer will be here later with his Tech News Roundup, and then at the end, Dave Knight will show us some sales razzle-dazzle I hope we can all use. We're going to ask during the meeting, you mute yourself if you're not actively asking a question, and that helps keep background noises down. If you want to talk without going through a lot of foo-fa-ra, just hold down your space bar. It disables the muting temporarily. After the first presentation, we'll be breaking out into separate rooms for conversation. And when we return, there'll be news and announcements. Rick has an announcement. If anyone else has, just send in the chat to me and I'll fit you in. Let's see. The AI ethics panel, the people I named, their contributions and discussions over this week, I wish you could have all participated because it was extraordinary. We had a lot of back and forth, and it really, really helped. So I'm going to end this poll, and I'm going to share the results. Can you see the results? Okay.
Yes.
Yes, we can see them.
Let me see if I can view the details. Oh, don't make me do that. All right. Later off screen, I will get the answers to these essay questions and share them. Okay, panel people. Let's start talking. One of the first things we thought would be relevant is to define what is and is not artificial intelligence. Katherine?
Me?
Everybody's muted, so unmute yourself if you want to talk here.
I have the second part of that question. I don't want to answer what it is, but yeah.
Steve, I think you suggested this, that LLMs do not equal artificial intelligence. Can you talk to the
yeah. Can everyone hear me? Is my audio all right?
Yes.
Good.
Yes.
Yeah. I think, when I've talked with business leaders and others about artificial intelligence, I just like to distinguish and say, when we say AI, what are we talking about? Are we talking about old school machine learning, which has been around for 30 years or more, depending on how you think about it, and has lots of well-known and, non-controversial applications like, figuring out which images are most likely to be a cancerous tumor or which credit card profiles are likely to, suggest fraud. And of course, there's all kinds of problems with those algorithms, but they've been around for a while. Or do we mean language models? And so if a business owner comes to me and says, gosh, I have to get on the AI bandwagon, I just kind of stop and say, well, which AI do we mean? Is it sort of the older school machine learning, or do you really mean you feel you need to find a place for language models? So I kind of resist calling the big LLM technologies AI. I don't like that. I think it's not descriptive. And I also think it gives us this science fiction gloss, which the makers of the technology would love to endow it with, but which it hasn't earned. And so I kind of insist on calling ChatGPT and Claude and Anthropic and Mistral and whatever else they are. I just like to call them language models and say, okay, do we need language models in your business? And then they kind of maybe sometimes step back a bit and say, oh, well, when you put it that way, I don't know, maybe I don't. Do I? So I just find that's a helpful clarifier.
Yeah, and sorry, I'm just gonna introduce, I mean, I know most of you, everybody there, but I'm Kate Waldhauser. I'm the founder of Violet Beacon, and we are our focus, we're a FileMaker, we're a Claris partner, but also really focused on implementing responsible AI. And I know I'll get a chance to kind of talk a little bit more about, what responsible AI is. But when I'm talking to people, or what's helped me in my understanding of AI. And of course, there is no agreed upon definition, and I think that's, Steve, the other important point is like, yeah, you can say AI and it's going to mean completely different things to different people, right? So I like using sources that I find to be trustworthy, right? So I'm going off of two definitions of AI. And this is just really from a technical perspective is the way I'm seeing it. I'm going to share my screen once you enable that, Lynn. Sorry, I didn't enable. I'll ask you about that, but that's okay. I'll just describe it. So the first definition that I use. Okay, there we go. This is from the OECD, which is the Organization of Economic Cooperative Development. So it's an international non-governmental organization. So I feel like, okay, you have enough parties coming into play. What is their definition? And we're talking about an AI system, which is also a little bit different than AI, because sometimes people say, oh, my AI told me this, and we use AI as a object, as a subject, as a, maybe it could even be a verb, it's growing as we're navigating this new world, right? But this definition, an AI system is a machine-based system that for explicit or implicit objectives infers for the input it receives how to generate output such as predictions, content, recommendations, or decisions that can influence physical or virtual environments. Different AI systems vary in their levels of autonomy and adaptiveness after deployment. And I'll include links to this, but it's really interesting how they came up with this definition and the different, because people spend a lot of time just thinking about this. And there's many ways to classify AI, right? But sometimes, and the way I kind of think of it is breaking down to what is the AI actually doing. And at a base level, us, as most of us are FileMaker developers, coding, building logic, that is considered a form of AI. That's symbolic AI, right? The next step up might be statistics, right? If you took a statistics class, like that's a type of prediction modeling, right? And then we get into machine learning, deep learning, and of course, LLMs, and then, the conjunction of all different models and agents. We could keep going on to levels of complexity, maybe is this basis. But I don't want to talk too much, so I'm going to stop there, and I want to hear other people's opinions, but I wanted to share that with me because I too am really focused on what are we talking about when we talk about AI.
Wow, that was great. Katherine, you were going to talk about personal values and externally shared rules of ethical behavior.
Yeah, just from a perspective of in my company, I want to help my clients lead from, knowledge and confidence and not from fear. So helping people identify why they have the feeling that they have about AI, whether it's terror or fear or woohoo, let's jump off the cliff, like we've got in the next section, is starts with examining what your values are, and those are your personal beliefs, and also identifying where you are on what we've got there, the misery index, because I have this theory that we're all happiest at a certain level of misery. So we're going to maintain throughout our lives a certain level of, I don't know, anxiety or fear or happiness or whatever, based on how we grew up, our experiences and how we've developed as an adult. So what your personal beliefs are, how nervous you are in general about things, and then how your beliefs interact with ethics, which is the shared rules of good and bad behavior. So for AI, it's a new thing for our 750,000-year-old nervous systems, Neolithic, Paleolithic nervous systems. It's not agriculture. It's not fossil fuel energy that allows us to drive, hundreds of miles in an hour or a couple hours, whatever. It's kind of computers. It's a new thing. How do we deal with this? What do I believe is right about how I behave in the world? Uh, how I want my company to behave, etc. And how does that align with what are other people doing that like does or does not align with my values? How are they going to use it? That is what terrifies me. So anyway, I know it's a little bit of like trailing off here, but I just wanted to say, spending some time thinking about your own values and the values or ethics of the communities that you belong to is really useful in understanding or deciding how you're gonna just what AI is for you and how you're gonna use it.
Mhm. All right. All right. We've kind of gotten close to it. Current attitudes towards AI. Kate and Katherine, you were going to talk about this. We listed three. Some people are all in, some people are concerned, and some people are just nope. So
Yeah, Kate, what do you think? Go ahead.
Okay, I'm going to share my screen again because I'm kind of a nerd. I'm going to show you. Well, of course, I'm not a nerd. I'm just a person that likes technology, like all of us. I want to show you a pet project that I've been working on really quick. So I also really love to read. I read about AI like a lot, and so I took my database of books that I'm reading, have read, want to read, and I started applying some, kind of logic to this because I just need to say it, like all of my opinions are driven from the information that I'm absorbing, right? Which actually sounds very familiar, like that's what an LLM is, right? It's taking in information and we're processing, we're building, and of course, like I have my own thoughts and beliefs and ethics coming into this, so that's going to ground. But I kind of vary, I see it as, and of course, you can vary this up in as many classes as you want, but there's pragmatists, there's the techno optimists, there's the naysayers and the doomsayers, and so I have this page here that I put in that I just broke because I'm demoing live, and of course that's going to happen. But for example, like, so here's all the books that I've read so far. I think this is in last year. And yeah, everything. So there's 8 pragmatists, 4 techno optimists, 1 naysayer. So the naysayer is, of course, the one that's saying like, this is never going to happen, right? The AI, it's like, this isn't going to happen. The doomsayer is the one that's saying, we're going to kill ourselves, the world's going to come to an end. The techno optimist is the one that believes, right, that this is going to save us, this is the whole, the future of human life, right? And then the pragmatist is the one taking kind of the middle approach. And most of the books, for whatever reason, that and again, these are general categories. And in all of these books, you're going to find multiple points of view. I don't think it's close enough to be that, but I think that's reflective of me, where I feel like I'm trying to be a pragmatist, where I really try to absorb different various points of view when it comes to this. And there's all sorts of information out there. But for myself, really to get a handle on what AI is, what it's really capable of, I have to move past the headlines, and because I think the news headlines aren't helpful for me in understanding, what's really possible here. And so I'm really trying to dig as deep as I can because I'm fascinated with this stuff. I want to learn as much as I can, and it helps me as a consultant to be able to educate other people and share. So any of these books that you've seen on here, feel free to pick them up because, again, I haven't read all of these, but the ones I have, I've learned a lot from and really enjoyed.
okay.
Lynn, can I throw something in here about that a little bit? Kate, you're like amazing. I'm just astounded. I'm so happy to hear everything you're saying. And I think along the lines of the doomsayer, the truth sayer, all those sorts of things. It occurred to me a couple of months ago that what we're all on here is the superhero journey. And I don't know, I sent a link to when we were talking about this panel, I sent a link to a blog post I wrote about that. And I'm not sure if anybody got a chance to read it, but basically in the movies, a superhero or somebody who finds a new superpower, they're like, whoa, like, I mean, if they're not in the, oh my God, I hate this and I'm never going to touch it thing, but they find something exciting and they like play with it and they're jumping all around and they're zapping things and then they break something or they hurt somebody and they have to go, oh my God, let me think about this. What am I all about? There's the values and ethics thing. And how do I want to use this? What's appropriate for me in doing this? So then step 4 is using it in alignment with your values. But there's a little catch to that because superheroes and villains all have values and they all use this in alignment with their values. So just because you're using it in alignment with your values doesn't mean you're a hero. Yeah, so yeah, I really liked your categories there, the 4 categories of those things. So I think this kind of meshes with that a little bit. So.
Yeah, that was awesome. Yeah, I think you're right on track. It's getting to the values, getting to the root of it. Yeah.
Okay, Sol, did you want to put your comment in?
Sure. I mean, I was just kind of responding to this idea that, it's just number crunching, right? Like LLMs and machine learning is just number crunching. And I think that that was true for a very long time. But I was under the impression that at this point, there's kind of an element of an unknown black box scenario where I think I've heard the analogy where these companies are more like growing an organism than developing or building at this point. And so I was just curious if Steve had an idea about that, or if other people had come across that analogy.
I do, Saul, and it's interesting because I was reading something yesterday about a Discord group that one of the senior people at Anthropic I guess they owned the group, and they forced the group to allow a chatbot to participate. They forced the group to allow an instance of Claude to essentially read their messages and converse with them, and many of the group members didn't want this. And one of the things that Anthropic executive said at the time was, well, look, these things are growing new neurons. And I have to say, I will admit, sort of in Kate's spectrum there, I'm somewhere between a naysayer and a doomsayer. In other words, I'm inclined to think that many of the harms of this technology kind of outweigh its uses. I don't think that's a useful attitude for us all to have as consultants. As consultants, we should think about whether and how to use it. But I would push back not at your comment, Saul, but at that narrative. I think these folks have something to sell, and I think it isn't so. As far as I know, LLMs are still just number crunching. It is, in Emily Bender's words. And Kate, I don't know if she was on your list, the AI con, but if not, looking at Emily Bender's work is a good example of a very healthy degree of skepticism. She would say, and I think I tend to agree, it's just still a big pile of linear algebra. You've got highly motivated companies who are deep in the hole. They need to make their money back any way they can, whether it is persuading you that they're growing neurons, which there's no way they're doing, or opening up their LLMs to, adult content, whatever it is, they've got to make their money back. And so they're going to peddle a narrative that says, well, it used to be number crunching, but now it's not. Now it's magic. I don't believe it personally. And I think it is hard to believe when you consider the motivations of the people who are selling the story. That's not to say it couldn't happen. That's not to say it won't happen. That's not to say we won't find ourselves in an Asimov book sometime in our lifetime, as many of us have probably hoped we would since we were kids. But I am skeptical. I would put it that way. Mm-hmm. And anyway, that
does make a lot of sense. And I think that the fact that it messes up so much really kind of points to the fact that it's still just number crunching and probabilities, and some of the probabilities aren't truth, right? But this idea that that the marketing is better for them to say that we don't know what's actually happening inside the box, and and it's growing its own neurons. That to me doesn't seem like a good marketing tactic for them, because it creates more fear and more opposition. So I think the logic, your stream of logic makes a lot of sense, except for that point. I'm not sure that that part makes sense,
I can
because
see,
this seems like an obstacle for them to say
I
that.
could see it. I agree, sorry, Sal, that it creates
But
fear in a lot of us, but for early adopters or for people, it plays into the like you better get on now because it's going to be moving so fast. It's its own whole being. It does
that's a good point.
accelerate that desire.
Yeah.
Speaking of fears, I'm going to share my desktop. You can see that, right? This was,
Yes.
what are your biggest fears about AI in the poll? And these are the answers that came through. The one at the bottom, the inability to determine what is AI generated or not. As AI develops and becomes more sophisticated, I'm afraid our identification, our own personal identification algorithms are not going to be up to the task. Are we going to have to rely on AI to identify AI generated content? And then we'll get to that in a minute. So does anyone have any comment about those fears, that protecting ourselves from bad actors?
Well, I'll address the last one that the one you mentioned, Lynn, about the detecting AI created content, right? So I think, well, and then let me just back up 1 second. For me, I try to take a historical perspective of this because, like, as we all know, like, we've been through many, many technological revolutions, right? I mean, not personally. I mean, yeah, we've all been through some personally, right? I lived through the internet and more, right? But we can go back further in time. And for one thing, there was like, when the camera first came out, right? There was a lot of pushback, like, oh, art, nobody will ever draw, nobody will ever paint, and like, I can't imagine that now, right? It's like, okay. So I think this normal reaction of the fear and the what is going to happen and, is totally normal, because I think this is a cycle that we've been through before. And not to say that we should just, oh, everything's going to work out fine, because with every technological revolution, there's been a change. Like, it's a major change in how humans live and operate and how society is. And this one is different because this AI is, at least, when you look at it on one level, like, right, if we talk about AGI and what some of the people are trying to accomplish is basically an intelligence that's as and more intelligent than us, right? And that's almost like a threat, because we have been the dominant species, right? For, I don't know. Now, I don't want to get too off track here, so let me go back. So anyway, what I'm saying about what I think I'm trying to bring to the point is that with all of these, new technology is started, and then later on we build rules and regulations around it, right? And there are rules and regulations around AI generated content in other countries. Like, I'm now blanking, I'll have to go look up the article, but yeah, you cannot, like, you can't use somebody else's image, generated with AI, and those things are starting to build here in the US. They're of course building in Europe, in Singapore, and other many, but it's going to be a little bit slow to catch up because the technology is moving so fast. Now, it doesn't mean people don't break the law, right? Like, people still break the law all the time, but I do think, at least for me, I have trust that the regulation is here and that it's on its way, right? So that's there to protect us from bad actors. Because again, it's not the AI that's creating the image, it's a person, right? That's where the morals come in. That's where the, it's a person choosing to use the technology maliciously.
Right. I don't have your faith that the US is regulating anything correctly or intends to regulate anything correctly. But where I start to spin out on just the large fears, well, I spin out on the large fears at full stop, but I can't do anything about that. So what I do have control over is what do we do in our practice with our clients, with my own use. And so I'm going to be quiet until we get to that, because my generalizations aren't going to be helpful until then. That's where I get some sense of control. I mean, it's not a sense of control; it's actual control. We have actual choices to make in our daily work, and so that's where I am putting most of my energy, because my faith elsewhere isn't super hot right now.
I think we have to use our humanity. We individually have to use our humanity with this, because it's not AI, LLMs, etc. This technology is not humane. It's not going to be intelligent, hopefully, on its own. But what I meant to say actually is we have to use our humanity, because even though we can ask the AI, large language model developers to do good and to put in guardrails, etc., and we can rely on hopefully on our governments to put in the laws that we need. That's great, but we are here, like you said, on the ground level, working with this stuff. So we need to use our humanity, our judgment, our values, our skills, etc., to use this ethically.
It sounds like the answer to the question, is it already too late to retreat, is yes. In some way, both large language models and AI, developing AI, is going to be a big factor in life going forward. We have to deal with it as it is and as we want it to be.
I just want to throw a short, because I don't really have that perspective, that I think if we were to turn back from AI now, it would set us back. That's what I don't think I think that would actually be the unethical thing to do. And I know that's probably not a popular viewpoint, but that if we as a species can't move forward with technology with the confidence that we know how to handle this and take care of ourselves, then I'm concerned for humanity that we're going to take a step back from it. I realize that might be a little bit contentious there, but I do believe that.
Well, I think you can distinguish between the technology in its current form. So Lynn, I'm not sure I agree that I don't think there's ever a point of no return. You can always say no. You can always say, I won't participate. I'm not going to, and I don't have to. I do think you can distinguish between, for example, large language model technology and the products that large, highly motivated actors are trying to push into every corner of our lives. And I think you could perhaps remain open to using one of them all at the same time, saying, I don't want OpenAI in my kid's classroom. I don't personally want OpenAI in my kid's classroom, for example. So I think there's room for that as well. Keith, the idea that it could be unethical to turn back from it is interesting, right? That's one of those. It's almost a science fiction ethical quandary. I think it's a real quandary. But I don't know. I just come back to that division of sort of saying, well, I think a person can remain open to using some of these technologies and still say, if one wishes to, hey, I want nothing to do with these large companies, because they will not police themselves. They will not effectively put in guardrails, although they'll do a lot of performative theater around it. You can't really put in guardrails around something that is trained on everything that these models are trained on. I think, if you read the papers that come out every day or so, there are staggering exploits that just make you think, wow, how is it that reading, for example, insecure computer code can turn a major frontier model racist, which it can do. So I think there's a distinction to be made there. You can sort of look at the technology and say, maybe I'm open to it. You can perhaps look at commercial actors and their relationships with government and say, I don't know if I'm open to that or not. So long-winded answer, but yeah.
Well, we've already had examples of where the image generation are taking people's images and making them naked including minors. And those are circulating widely out there. That to me is a violation of social ethics. And, yet the second use of any new technology is pornography. I mean, that's that's the thing. My favorite AI quote is, I want AI to wash my dishes and fold my laundry so I can do my creative work. I don't want AI to do my creative work so I can wash dishes and fold my laundry. That we have a whole lot of defining to do about what is a valuable use and what is not. Dave Knight, you had a question?
Yeah, just a comment. Here we are, this group founded in Southern California. I'm sitting here in Burbank. It's the media capital of the world. We've got 1,200 businesses in media and entertainment. And when you look at, so a lot of the comments have been about a tool, right? Hey, this is a hammer and it helps me drive nails. But the generation of creative content coming out of these machine instances it's a real, I mean, so I think a lot of people, I've seen the notes and the comments about destructive jobs, things of that nature. Also the sanitization of creativity, right? Everything coming out of a bot instead of from the mind of somebody. So in our industry, our predominant industry in this town, there's a significant jolt already being felt. A lot of writers, directors, actors, notwithstanding the strikes and some of the shifts in the industry, but it's a huge concern in terms of job loss, creativity loss, and sort of the vanillization of creative content coming out of what normally is between a pair of ears, coming out of a bot now, and any sort of uh, you know specific agendas or whatever that are infused into those machines. So anyway, it's a concern, and we're seeing it already in this primary industry for Southern California.
Well, carrying on for that, what about widespread job loss? Because businesses are jumping in to AI for low-level productivity kind of things. I've heard it's really damaging the legal assistant community. Maybe you guys can come up with other industries that are being affected.
So I
Yeah,
just
if
posted.
you,
Well, the obvious one is software.
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah, custom software. That's going to be a challenge for us that are in that industry.
you know, I think so. First of all, in terms of resources, if you want to read about AI related job loss, you can look at the work of Bryant Merchant. He's got a Substack called Blood in the Machine. He's got a book by the same name, which is about the Luddites, which I have yet to read, but I'm looking forward to it. He has had a series of profiles talking about the destructive effects of AI in different industries. Translation has been one, copywriting is another. Those are just a couple of them. And typically, I don't know, again, this is my skeptics or my cynics perspective on this. It's not that the AI is doing work that people used to do. That's not what's happening. What's happening is that employers are using AI to depress wages and make people's lives more precarious. So in the translation field, people are no longer being asked to do translations from scratch. They are being asked to clean up machine generated translation, which has always been an element of the work, but is paid at a much lower rate. And now all of the work, so first of all, the volume of work for translators declines, and then the bulk of the work they're being asked to do is machine related cleanup. Is the output as good as what human translators used to produce? Of course it isn't. However, for the huge price break that companies are able to get by using this and by depressing the value of the labor in that way, it's to their advantage to do so. So I think in as many places as AI is actually doing something for employers, it is also being used to say, hey, you better accept to the humans, hey, you better accept less money for your work, or we're going to replace you with one of these machines, whether or not that's actually real, whether or not the generated content is as good. My view is it's not as good. Others might disagree. So I think it's real. I think it's real. And I think it's less that the AI, again, sort of repeating myself, I think it's less that the AI does things that people used to do than that people believe it does. And so now you have folks who are not going to hire, they're going to slow their hiring down. And in our space, what concerns me is I've heard from folks who've talked to customers, and now customers are saying to them, well, I used to pay you X dollars for that feature, but I'm sure you're using AI now, and so it's going to be 10 times faster. So I'm not willing to pay AI. I'm not willing to pay what I used to pay for that feature. And I think those of us who use these tools know LLM assisted coding is great, but it's not leading to a 10x increase in productivity that we can pass along as savings to the customer. So that's a concerning view of the technology to me.
Right. So Dave made a comment that the accounting industry, the tax returns and stuff, they're all in on going AI on tax returns. I can't imagine what AI hallucinations are going to do to our tax returns. Oh, you owe $3 million.
I just wanted to mention, I threw in the chat a link to the World Economic Forum Future of Jobs report, and it's a digest. You don't have to read the whole report, right? But I just try just to share my point of view, and of course that's what we're all, these are our opinions, but I really try to get to the source, right? And research, if it's done well, can be a good insight into what's really going on. It's hard to digest all of this information, and I think because we're human, like, we have to choose voices that we're going to listen to and trust, right? And it's so interesting because I talk a lot about trustworthy AI, but it really comes from trustworthy people. It's like, this is how all this is tied together. But what was I going to say? But also, the stock market runs on emotions, right? So business is emotional, and if people, even though we're rational, we're sometimes irrational, and so I think even how people feel about this technology is completely valid, because that's going to drive how it's, accepted, deployed, what the future of all of this holds. So those are some of my, again, thoughts, opinions on this matter, and I just wanted to share some of the stuff I'm going to for my information.
A lot of fears are, some of us have read science fiction for years, is right now all AI programming originates with humans. It's when it becomes self-generating that we all fear. So, Skynet is out there.
When we get to how we're working with this with clients, I mean, the emotions that you're describing, Kate, are also felt by the users of our applications, right? So when we incorporate AI into FileMaker applications, or when we incorporate FileMaker into other things, that transparency on those interactions is key. The fear that we're feeling, or the trust issues that we're having, are the same issues that our users are going to have. So when we think through practical applications, the more transparent we can be about what elements are being handled by an LLM, and here's what you can review, and here's where it came from, and here's what we fed it to get that result. Everything that you would want to see to gain some trust in an output is what your users are going to want to see also. So I just want to put a pin in these emotions for when it comes time to actually think about what you're going to produce for a user.
Do you want us to, should we switch to that topic, Lynn? Was that the...
I don't know how strict we are with the 45-minute window here.
We have another 35 minutes in our session.
Oh,
so we have time to discuss various things. If I could get my cats out of the way of my notes. Okay. I'm sorry. You want to take that a little farther, Sara?
Well, I don't want to go out of order too much. I just want to hold on to the concepts of what we're feeling about emotions around AI, and to think of that when we're moving into what we do practically for our users.
Yeah, I think that's actually the next. We have one more thing to cover in this area, and then we'll move on to that. And I think the emotions will become appropriate there. We wanted to talk about environmental costs of AI with all the huge data and processing centers. I was reading articles that are saying that a chat GPT query is 10 times more environmentally expensive with power and water usage than a simple Google query. Okay. So, I mean, and these data centers are going into places that are environmentally sensitive, water resource poor, and they do use a lot of water resources. Anyone have a comment on that?
I'm in Central Washington, and it's lovely, and it's also a great place for data centers, it turns out. We've got 50 data centers within 35 kilometers of my town, because we've got the cheapest power in the nation, because we've got the mighty Columbia River and a bunch of dams on it. So we have hydroelectric power and the river for cooling, and so it's a great place to put those. I think you can find varying statistics on exactly how impactful various uses of LLMs are. And, you know, flying in an airplane is still going to be more expensive ecologically than using ChatGPT for a day. So there are lots of choices we can make, and you can tie yourself in knots trying not to have an impact on the world. And the only way to not have an impact on the world is not be here. But I do think that the environmental costs are real. So as we're making these decisions, again, it should be one of the factors of like, what footprint do I have to have? What footprint is worth it? Just right. Balancing that. Know that there is a footprint. And you could argue that defaulting to asking ChatGPT things all day long is probably not good for your brain either. It's not great for my water resources here in Central Washington. So I am encouraging our company and anybody that I talk to just to be intentional about, is this use worthwhile? There are certainly going to be uses that are worthwhile, but I think that we can get pretty lazy and overuse resources, or use a large language model when something more targeted could be better, and using a small language model that might give you a better answer and have a smaller footprint. And I think you brought this into the conversation, Lynn, because not everybody is even aware that there is an environmental impact. There is. That's the end of the statement. It does matter.
I did see, and I wasn't able to source, but my husband brought it to my attention, an article about a new processing unit that does not have the heat and electric draw overhead that the ones they use now have. And it's in development, and I guess it's going to come to market soon, but it would completely eliminate all of those environmental. I wish I'd been able to find the reference. It was not like ifuckinglovescience.com or something.
Yeah, if you find it after, let me know.
Yeah, if I do, I'll put it into the group chat. I
wanted to comment on the environmental, some people have put some things in. I put another link to a paper from the International Energy Agency. So I think one of the interesting things about AI, and again, this kind of goes back to how we're talking about AI, right? We're talking about ChatGPT. Well, that's an LLM, right? But AI is so much more than that. And if you really kind of look into the depths of what the researchers are doing and what the scientists are accomplishing with AI, and I'll look up some more papers here, but the effects that they're actually able to have on using AI, and I'm not talking about LLMs, I'm talking about deep learning, machine learning, to actually create more efficient data centers. So it's kind of the paradox of it, right? Is that we actually need AI to help us with the environment, because we need this technology. Now, LLMs is another matter, right? And the other interesting thing, you can read that paper, it goes into a lot of the talk about, the different impacts and what, this is the problem I have with the news headlines, is they'll say something like that, 10 times more powerful. Well, that's a catchy headline. And not to say it maybe is true, but it is so hard to measure that. in this scientific paper, they're actually measuring, like, here's the actual energy impact of a small language model, right? So you can use like a ChatGPT for, mini or a micro, or, you can use these models and they're going to have significantly different energy impacts, versus using a reasoning model. Or this is very nuanced. And so I just encourage anybody who's interested in this to really dig deep into it, because there's a lot to learn on this topic. And the headlines, I think, sometimes do us a disservice by just saying these things that are too broad to be able to come up with a general consensus about, is AI good or bad for the environment? And then the truth is, like, there's so many choices we make on a daily basis that we don't think about. I mean, I order stuff from Amazon all the time. I know I'm not the only one. Like, that is bad for the environment, but I don't really think twice about it. Now, my husband and I, we do share a car. We share a hybrid car. That's good for the environment. So these are the personal choices that we have to make. And I think, Sarah, you made a perfect point about that. Like, we still get on airplanes, we have to make choices every day about how we want to, it's just that the climate and AI happens to be at the forefront because it keeps coming at us, through the news and other sources.
Yeah,
but
it's just
really
one
good
more
topic.
choice, right? Like, ideally, we're all vegetarian and we, have electric cars, and there are a million choices you can make about your ethics and your impact in the world. And this is just one more that's
Yeah.
complicated and difficult to get informed properly on.
Yes. Yeah, that's very good.
Yeah, and I think there's a focus on the environment, but if you want a full catalog of harms, you can expand it. But part of this too is, I think AI has kind of become the whipping child for all of the possible harms that we could catalog in the sphere of big tech, right? So we can talk about the environmental impact. This has been true before. Data centers were energy hogs before. All of this was bad. And something has created a tipping point where now with AI and with LLMs, we're worried about it. But that's not to say that's inappropriate. I think I order stuff from Amazon too. I fly on the plane way too much. It's worthwhile, I think, to stop and think for a second, wait, what am I doing? And of course, the whole architecture of the modern world is designed to insulate us from the consequences of those things, to encourage us to, buy the thing, take the flight, and don't worry about who's being harmed downstream. That's how it's set up, right? It's kind of a rigged game. But getting back to AI and LLMs, if we want to expand the definition of harms, another one that some of the naysayers and the more, not the doomsayers, but the naysayers have focused on is just some of the human costs, right? Because in order to take these raw models and socialize them, you have to do this thing called reinforcement learning with human feedback, which means that when somebody says something racist, you have to have somebody read it and say, that's a vile thing to say. Don't say that to our users. And often these are people in Kenya who are being paid $2 an hour in these massive farms of people that essentially slip through any safety net of international law, labor protection, or anything like that. It's not by far the least savory occupation that folks in Kenya can be recruited to. There are worse ones, like romantically scamming Americans. So it is at least legal. But all of these models require hundreds of thousands of these interactions. It's sort of like the folks who used to have to moderate content for a company like Meta and would get PTSD from the things they were exposed to. So the catalog of harms can continue, is all I'm saying. The environment is one. We can think about the human cost as well. But to Kate's point, it's a hard calculus, because every time you move in the modern economy, you're sending some kind of ripple that's doing something like that. Still good to bear in mind, but it's a tough problem.
Wow, that's a whole nother area of discussion. So we're going to talk about appropriate ethical use cases. Katherine, you had something about this.
Well, I was really intrigued by the report of the last year of the attorneys who filed a brief that was generated by AI, and they didn't check the sources, and it included bogus case references.
Hallucinated sites, yeah.
Yeah, and then they got caught. I thought that was great. So I went to ChatGPT and I said, there's a joke in here, and said to ChatGPT, please come up with a joke for this. And it came up with one that wasn't really good enough. So I've changed it a little bit. It's not funny, but here's the joke. They treated AI like a text field without appropriate validation, like member of value list. They okay. All right. So yeah, so for we were and thinking about this topic about like appropriate ethical use cases, geez, of course we need to understand, I think we need to understand our own values and then understand what our clients are looking for if we're implementing it for them. And I think, like for me, I don't want to work for companies that are unethical or that are, working against the things that I think are important, like environmental integrity or human rights, that sort of a thing. So that's like for me, that's the ground, the first decision to be made. Is this company somebody I want to work for in the first place? Okay. Is the project basically ethical or what value does it bring? Sorry, the reason I'm like hesitating a little bit here is because I went down a rabbit hole in my own head about risk awareness. Uh,
Yeah,
so I
talk about that.
yeah, I'd like well, everything that we've just been talking about, like for the whole conversation, but specifically like the last 15 minutes, thinking about the environmental costs, the effect on society, the effect on individuals, on whether this is going to support people to have a living wage, etc. Those are all really important things to think about. But risk awareness itself is, like a whole industry. So, and I think I saw in the comment we're using AI to come up with, I'm sorry, and Kate, you said it too, better ideas for power sources, etc. So which little tiny language model are we going to use on our local machine to examine risk and come up with some sort of a framework that we're then going to apply to the decisions that we're going to make? I kind of actually want to ask, believe it or not, Ian jumps in about this. Because Ian, if you're there, I've been hello,
Okay.
following the work that you've been doing for a couple of years and been like, wow. So if you don't mind me asking you, how are you thinking about risk awareness and the ethical use of AI?
Uh,
Sorry to put you on the spot there.
no, that's a good question. Uh, and yeah, no, I don't really have an answer right now.
Okay,
Um,
sorry.
what I probably should have done, it's quite funny. One of my former clients, she was a FileMaker client about 15 years ago, went back to university, and she's now a professor of AI ethics, sort of focusing on military applications of AI.
Mhm.
And yeah, so to be honest, I kind of think about it like I'd sort of say, what would Elka think? And it's it's hard because I don't think it's really actually that different in a lot of cases from any kind of software. Um, that those problems have been around for a long, long time with software, and they can always come and surprise you. So it's difficult.
Mhm.
Yeah, sorry, I don't have a really good answer for you.
Yeah. Well, I
Well,
think
I
you're
have a comment. If
yeah.
you, I don't know how many of you have actually read the terms of FileMaker's licensing, but long ago I did. And there is a specific prohibition in there against using FileMaker to program or control anything that could affect a human life. Like you can't use FileMaker to dispense medications or, various other things that would
Yeah,
affect a human life. And these AIs or large language models are being used for purposes that actually do affect human lives. And there's no guardrail there. There's no human responsibility for the products. It's up to the user, caveat emptor, to determine whether or not this
it is
should be
interesting
used.
because some of these things, I've been a bit surprised a couple of times. I've had two occasions where sending data to the Anthropic API, Anthropic came back and said, basically came back with a redacted answer on the grounds that it was talking about personally identifiable information. It says it looks like you're doing something with PII, and it basically redacted the information and just refused to handle it, which I
Do you
found
think that's
interesting.
an EU specific prohibition? Because I don't know, has anyone in the US encountered anything like that?
It was on a project working with somebody in the States, and if I recall, when I mentioned it to them, I think they got the same result when they tried it from their API key.
The newest GPT is pretty scrupulous about things like that in a way that the older ones weren't. And I don't mean to pivot the conversation, but one of the things that you're alluding to there, Lynn, is the issue of accountability. And I think one of the challenges with these models is they emit text that looks like it comes from an intelligent being, but no one's accountable for the utterance, right?
Right.
When a doctor tells you something, they're accountable for what they tell you. If they get it wrong, we don't want to punish them, but at least they say I stand behind it, or I say I got it wrong. But if ChatGPT dispenses bogus legal advice, all the company's going to tell you is, yeah, don't do that. But it's a little bit unfair. I have a little bit of sympathy for the lawyers who generated those bogus briefs, because I think that the way the product is presented and presents itself induces them to do that. It speaks like an oracle. It pretends to be omnipotent, and it's very, very tempting to use it that way. So the issue of accountability is a challenging one, and it means that the accountability is on the individual user. And that means that when we counsel our business clients, they're ultimately the ones who are kind of accountable for how the technology gets used and what it emits, because the vendor certainly isn't standing behind it and being accountable for it. So locating that accountability, that's I think, a real challenge.
Well, they are, or we are, right? If we were using it for code, I mean, whatever you use it for, you are still accountable. Well, the person using it is the accountable person. So if we're helping our clients use it to make decisions, then we need to be transparent with them about, are you looking at your data, or are you looking at a rendering of your data that was created by AI where you can trust it? Or are you looking at a projection from an LLM that's based on whatever the LLM thinks should be the projection? If we're using it for our own correspondence, for our own code, it's ultimately ours. We still have to own the result, right?
I want to make one comment on the lawyer. This is anecdotal, but I was talking to somebody about this issue, right? The lawyers using AI and getting to pay fines, and her comment on it. Her mother is a lawyer. She said from her perspective, or what she was hearing, was that the lawyers, they don't care. They're intentionally doing this because the fines they have to pay are minimal in terms of the amount of money that they're saving by using. So again, it comes back to the human, right? It's the person that's making the ethical choice that in her opinion, it was, they knew good and well what they were doing, but they decided that it was worth, right? So I know we're not really talking about ethics, but in some way that's the consequentialist, the utilitarian, like, well, the ends justify the means, right? And we're all different on our ethics. So some people choose to knowingly break the law, and it's a part of, how it goes as well. And I just want to say, this ties into the responsible AI aspect of what Violet Beacon is doing. And I've chosen to work with some very specific frameworks, because there are frameworks designed, and these have been in the works for years, about how to, design, implement, manage AI systems. And I'm happy to share into that if you think that's the right time, or we can, let me know, Lynn.
Talking about the frameworks, you mean?
Yeah,
I think that actually moves us on to the next thing, which is constraining AI within ethical boundaries.
Yeah. So when we talk about risk assessment, it can feel very overwhelming. Like, how do I assess risks? Well, there are specific frameworks. So there's the NIST, which is the U.S. National Institute of Standards and Technology, has an AI RMF. That's an AI risk management framework. So it's a very organized way, of and it's not mandatory, although in the law in Texas that just came into an act January 1st, there's an AI Responsible AI Act that's currently in place in Texas. If you follow and subscribe to the AI RMF, then it in a way protects you. So this is what I mean by the laws are coming. They're already coming. There are 4 states where we have laws now because of our federal government, like they're statewide, which makes things a little bit trickier, but these pieces are in place, and you can use the AI RMF. The other one that I'm using is the ISO 42001. So if you're familiar with the ISO, the International Standards Organization, And the 42,001 is for, AI systems management. And I'm a lead implementer in this, I'm certified in this. So what I can do is help people walk through in a very detailed, structured way. Like, we're FileMaker developers. I want structure. I want to know what the questions are. How do I need to look at this? What's the framework? And then you can apply that. And I think it's important people know that these tools are out there, because often it does feel like we're just in the dark. Like, how do I approach this? And that there are actual, tools to help implement AI responsibly. And these are the things and the processes that we're using at Violet Beacon to help people get through this and walk into the world of AI.
Do you see any movement in the AI community, developer community, towards using one or both or more of these standards?
I don't know, because I think this, so in terms of this is more for a business, right? So it's a business that's using AI either through a product or internally that wants to implement it. It's, as a developer, like, I would, I can as a developer, I can implement based off of these standards, but I don't know enough about this. I am working on something, and it's not done yet. I really want to get it done, but I'm working on something that's actually going to be designed for FileMaker developers on how to build AI responsibly within the FileMaker framework. Because, as we know, the FileMaker framework is very flexible and open, but it doesn't come with the tools because it's on the human, it's on the person to know how to build this. And so I'm working on that, and I hope to get it done in the next couple months, and then I'll be excited to share that with people. But I know other people I've talked to, specifically in the FileMaker community are aware of this and are building, are building evals, right? I mean, that's just a basic component, is just like, are you testing? Are you making sure that your AI is actually performing well, right? So how do we know that what we're building is actually high quality? And it's a complex issue. I don't think it's simple, but I think that there are definitely tools and techniques that we can use to build, higher quality, higher performing products for our customers.
If I can hop in on that, Kate, yeah, among the hats that I wear at Soliant, one of them is on our project management office, PMO. So part of our job is to figure out how we do things, right? What is the Soliant way? And obviously this is a big question, what is the Soliant way around the implementation of AI? So I've been putting my head to that. We have this. I'm going to share my screen for a second. This is a whole talk that I'm not going to do right now because this is a panel. but these are the guiding principles that we are encouraging ourselves to consider. It's still not institutionalized, right? We still haven't, there are 70 of us, and I don't have this to the place where it's this is a process that I know is followed every single time. So that's the next step, is to actually get it not necessarily adopted. I think emotionally adoption is less of an issue than the institutional process by which you're going to do it every time, and not just get too busy to think about something. But kind of in this order, think of, first of all, is this even useful? The utility of this is this use of AI going to be helpful to my client or to myself? Is it shiny and new, or is it solving a problem that they actually have? And I think that with the business acumen and the relationships that we have with our clients, often we know and can work with them on what's the actual business problem you're having? How much money are you losing here or there? Or are you leaving on the table? And for years, we've been able to program FileMaker-based solutions to those things. And often that's still the right answer. Sometimes an LLM might be useful. We haven't found a billion use cases for that yet. So I'm still working on the utility for our clients. Security can vary based on what the client's actual concerns are, right? There's one client we're working with who doesn't care too much about whether their data is going to be used to train a model. They said, I know that there are these options. We generally recommend Amazon Bedrock as a way to keep our data more secure than going straight to a public LLM. But they didn't even want to go with that. It didn't matter to them, and they have their own objections against Amazon, which fair enough, so they didn't want to use AWS as a product. But having that conversation about where is your data going and are you okay with it? Sustainability, again, asking the question, is this the way to go? Is this the lightest footprint we can have to get the result that you want? And then the veracity, it is still like, is this true? Is the answer right? Is the answer right enough because you're looking for something that could have some gray area, or are you really incorporating this in a way that the answer has to be 100%? And then the transparency, both in our own use of tools and to users. So making it evident to users that this was an answer generated from. We've got a project that one of my colleagues did that's getting some great adoption, where they have incorporated into Slack a chatbot named Shirley, based on, oh gosh, I'm going to forget which like 50s sitcom switchboard operator, Shirley. Anyway, they've given it a persona, but it's labeled like I think it's even beta, but like this is an experimental chatbot that's talking to our FileMaker system, so that users don't have to go into FileMaker. They're still in Slack, and they can say, "Hey Shirley, what was our whatever?" And Shirley's going to go and get some data, and that's got a lot of adoption because it's really easy to use, and it's transparent and saying, this is querying your FileMaker database, and I think this is the right answer, and this is how I asked. This is what I asked for. This is what it returned. So it's not pretending to be anything other than what it is. So this is the structure that I'm happy with theoretically, and we're still in the process of like, what does this actually look like project by project? And I could talk forever about that, but I'll stop talking now.
Kate. No, I'm sorry, Katherine. We had we've been hearing things and seeing things about an AI bubble. This is the financial side of the AI industry, and they're predicting a bubble similar to the dot-com crash back in 2008 or whatever. Katherine, did you have something?
There was a link that you provided, I think, Lynn, and I'll put it in the chat, or maybe you can, to the Ars Technica article about the bubble. And a couple of years ago, when I was living in Australia, I saw Sam Altman was traveling through, and our local huge tech, co-working space got him to come talk to us. And he was a fascinating character to me. He was very different in person than or speaking there anyway, than I sort of assumed. This is my cat Penny. She says hello. So the reason I'm talking about him a couple of years ago was he sounded confident. He wasn't like boasting, but he's just, the way he talked about the AI LLM ecosystem evolving sounded like he had a plan or a vision of what was going to happen. And in this article, the Ars Technica article about the bubble, he has announced recently that he thinks that the AI industry is in a bubble, but also he's now looking for like $3.5 trillion worth of investment, or however much, like a huge number of a dollar of investment. And the author of the article was saying he's got he has a tendency to talk big so that expectations are so that everybody's excited about it, etc. But also then to sort of, I don't know what the but also is. Hang on, let me think about what that was. Anyway, Sam Altman has a strategy for sort of pumping things up, and fear. I know what it is. Sorry, in my experience with somebody who's a narcissist or a controlling person, they will generate any emotion in you that they can to keep you focused on them. So like Steve, what you're talking about is like he has a motivation to keep us either afraid or excited. And that is that gives him our engagement. That's one part of it. The other part of it is that in this article that I thought was really interesting is the big players in LLMs, AI, et cetera, are big companies which have a lot of income from other sources than AI technology. So Microsoft, Google, et cetera. So they can stand to weather the bubble in a very different way. Well, they can stand to weather it, which is really different from the dot-com boom where there were tons of little companies who really didn't have income and they just when everything crashed.
Overvalued themselves, right?
Yeah. So that's what I wanted to say about the bubble. There's kind of two sides to it. The oh my God, are we in oh my God, are we in a bubble? Or oh no, we're doing fine and we're going to make a ton of money. And the companies who are making a lot of money already will probably weather any actual bursting of a bubble.
Do we think that there's going to be the kind of market consolidation that there was back in the 90s with ISPs all becoming huge, and then, the video stores, they all became Blockbuster or Netflix? It's just like there used to be one on every block, and then there was, I think the same is going to happen with AI, that somebody's going to become the controlling corporation.
I think that's the general trend. I would assume that's what's going to happen. Yeah, Dave, consolidation tends to happen after markets mature, says Dave Knight, and I think that's true. I think there's another aspect to it is even with consolidation, there are still little guys who do their thing, like, us FileMaker developers. So yeah, I think there's big gorillas and then there's little gorillas, if that makes sense.
Well, I'm not so sure about the consolidation. I read an interestingly contrary article a little while ago. There's the AI companies have ginned up this narrative that we're in an AI race somehow, predominantly with China. And so presumably you need government assistance and you're somehow going to win that race. What does winning the AI race look like is a good question. The point the article made was, well, hey, wait a second, look at what the Chinese are doing, because they're not acting like people who are in an LLM arms race. What are they doing with their major models? They're releasing them open weight or even open source. So there's another viewpoint that says, look, LLM technology is just math. There's no magic to it except for scale. And the models are going to become commoditized. And especially if we get some of these advances in hardware technology, at a certain point, you might be able to train your own GPT on we're already seeing devices from NVIDIA. Granted, they're still pricey. It's $5,000 for this little box full of chips, but you can run inference on it and potentially even train a model. So another point of view says, no, there's really nothing super magical about the algorithms under the hood, and the technology become commoditized, in which case, what are they trying to get control of? It's an interesting question. I don't know. I think there might be something to that.
And kind of coming up to the conclusion, should we as FileMaker developers advise our clients for or against using AI or LLMs? Katherine, anyone?
Oh yeah. Well, I'm more on the positive side, so yeah, I think we should be recommending it in appropriate use cases. And I think there's the other side of that coin is all my clients are saying, I want to use this. How am I going to use it? So then I think, Steve, you were saying this before, it's a matter of having a conversation and what do you actually want to accomplish? And what's the right technology to do that?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, agreed. I think it's exciting and people want to use it. And I'm closer to Steve in the skeptic, cynic, actual Luddite side. But my job is not that. So I've got to be able to help my clients with what they need. So I need to know about it. So as long as I'm comfortable that we are doing something that's helpful to them and we're doing it in a way that is safe for them, then I won't discourage it for sure, unless I think it's a bad idea. It's ultimately back to consulting, and this is, I mean, to Matt Navarre's point, it is a tool, right? Just are you using the right tool and are you using it correctly?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I would never advise a person in business not to use an LLM. I would just want to talk to them and say, are you sure that it's a good use case for what you're trying to do? I would love to see Matt's list of 20 use cases. I have no doubt they exist, and I bet they're super cool. I would worry with my clients whether they've just bought some hype. So, for example, silly case, if you've got a lawyer who says I'm going to use it to write my legal briefs, then you're not saying don't use the LLM. You're more saying it doesn't do that. So it's just a straight up consulting play of adapting the tool to the problem and counseling your client, maybe sometimes with some redirection or pushback. I'm sure we've all had clients where we've had to say in one way or another, hey, no judgment, but that's probably not the best idea. But certainly wouldn't advise a client not to use it. And Sarah gave some great examples of cases where you see kind of adapting your approach to the client's security, or to Heidi's point, data sovereignty concerns. All of that's in the mix. But if you use it right, sure, absolutely, throw it in the mix.
Absolutely. Chris, you had a question, comment?
Yeah, Sarah, I read your blog post from a couple of months back where you're talking about AI and disclosure and things like that. And I was curious if your views on this have evolved at all over the last few months now that you've actually, got some projects out there that are doing AI. And the reason, one point that you made in particular stuck with me, and that is that if AI is creating part of the work, then we need to disclose that. And the implication seemed to be about authorship honesty or something like that. And to me, that gets really muddy because who among us hasn't taken a class or read a blog post or learned a tip and trick or gone to an event and picked up a technique or methodology or strategy from anybody and incorporated that into their work. And so it's arguable that that is no longer their original work, it's derivative. And I would also argue that the whole software industry is full of, standing on the shoulders of giants, as it were. And so to me, that felt over the top to have to say this mechanical thing contributed, a dialog box or whatever it is, auth process to my thing. And I want to make sure you know about that, but we don't disclose, I learned this tip and trick from, some podcast or anything like that. And so I was just curious where you have settled out on this disclosure thinking.
Yeah, it is slippery. But the point of the disclosure is more that I have my customers' approval to put so what I do most often is business analyst work. So the ways that I use AI are, can I record this conversation and use Zoom's tools to help me make a transcript, to help me, pull my to-dos out of it. In that case, I want their permission to send this probably confidential conversation into Zoom's cloud to use their AI tools. So it's less about, ultimately the ownership of the product it's still my responsibility. Whatever I output is on my head. So I'm less worried about saying I got help from this thing and more worried about saying I want to use the resources we're going to share collectively with these tools. Are you okay with that? Because they might have objections. So far, as we've disclosed this, I don't know, 95% of our clients are like, sweet, I kind of assume you're using AI anyway. But there have been a couple of people who say, our information is proprietary enough, our workflows are proprietary enough. I don't trust this company enough for you to send this conversation somewhere else, or for you to take these screenshots and use AI to, start creating your mockups. Less so on code development. I don't know that we've had any objections there. So our answer to that is if we find that the way that we're using AI in our workflows is helpful enough to us that we want to continue doing that, and we have somebody who objects to using, Zoom chat or Atlassian's AI, and we really want to use those still, then we'll host them privately and talk with the client about is it okay if we bring these into our own servers? Is that the objection? But it's more on the data sovereignty side than the intellectual authorship side.
Something you mentioned on the, I forget, was it Dig FM or wherever you guys were, or no, it was that FM Bug in the UK. You guys had talked about the idea of if you're billing hourly and you found a tool that, accelerates the work, by 10 hours or something like that. Where am I going with this? I guess I'm thinking back to Jonathan Stark talking about hourly billing is nuts and saying value billing and you should bill by the value.
I think this makes value billing really tricky. I mean, if we stick with so far we're just sticking with our hourly billing, and if we're using AI to accelerate our work, then hooray, our clients just benefit from that. There's no real conflict of interest. It's only when you're doing value billing and saying, and this is worth X, and because of my innovative use of this thing, I'm getting there faster. I don't know. The client has the option, I guess, of poking some holes in that and seeing if it's a fair trade. But we're just being kind of straight with it right now.
Okay, we're about to wrap up here. Are there any final comments or questions from anyone on the panel? Obviously, this subject has tentacles everywhere. We could go in all different directions, focus on any one of these issues, and have hours of discussion. So, but it's been something that's been on my mind for a while. And so I appreciate the contributions of the people on the panel, the people who are here with us. There's a lot of very smart people in this room, and the resources and the discussion, I think, has been clarifying for me in a few different aspects. So I want to once again express my appreciation to all the people on the panel. And I'm actually looking forward to going back and reviewing this whole conversation once the recording is done. And now we're going to pause recording and go to breakout rooms. Okay, welcome back, everyone. I hope you enjoyed your refreshment break. And let's see, I got to get my semi-organized crap together here. There we go. We're going to have a brief announcement from Rick Kalman. And so go ahead, Rick.
Yeah, so I got a request from Janine Campbell. She's a Claris employee that is working on this initiative that I'm going to talk to you about, and asked, she knew I was going to go to FMDiSC and asked if I could share this. So you may be aware that for the last several years, we've been involved with the Apple Developer Academies. For the first several years, we were piloting this in Naples, Italy. And Douglas Wallace is the other evangelist for the company, who's stationed out of Europe, was involved with that. Well, in the last year, we expanded that to the Developer Academy in Detroit. But Apple has these academies all over the world. And for the most part, they put them together to teach people Swift, that then would lead to jobs as programmers and that sort of thing. Well, we were able to worm in FileMaker and Claris into the curriculum. In fact, when we have breakouts, we have to get bigger rooms because there's a massive interest, because it's so much easier to do something in FileMaker than Swift, right? And people are essentially looking to get a skill to get a job to make money. Right. So the request from Janine is when people are learning FileMaker in these academies, we are pairing them with FileMaker developers in what we're calling pods to be there to answer questions and that sort of thing. So let me just read you the blurb. As Academy learners adopt the Claris platform, we're committed to nurturing their professional success by connecting them with supportive experts from our FileMaker community. And to support these student developers, we've launched a new mentorship program. And frankly, we need help. I actually reached out to the full access attendees, and a number of people jumped on to it. We're seeking participants for small group Claris mentorship pods. In those pods, we're aiming to connect a few people who are new to Claris out of these academies with experienced guides. And then currently, we have 7 active mentorship pods running right now. And each pod consists of about 2 to 3 mentees and 2 mentors, right? And then once you get assigned, it's essentially self-organizing. There's an introduction, from both sides, and then they decide how they're going to operate. It's sort of in a way like Ask the Expert or something like that, or at the Genius Bar, that kind of thing, right? And so we do have a PDF that sort of explains this, like a 3-page thing. I might be able to attach it here. I'll try after this. And then we also have a studio form that allows people to sign up if they're interested in that. So that was the announcement I wanted to make. And I think I saw an affordance here. I know you can put links in. I also saw an affordance for a file, so I'll give that a try. There is an email address as well, and I'll put that in the link. Claris underscore mentorship at claris.com as well. And I think it goes directly to Janine. That's it.
Judy?
I'm just gonna add, so I'm a mentor in Pod Squad #1, and it is a fantastic experience. And my mentees are amazing people. And it's getting to the point that apparently the Naples Apple Academy people will be coming on stream as candidates for to be mentees. And my Pod Squad definitely desperately wants a Neapolitan to add to our team. And I just got an email yesterday saying from one of my mentees, can we add this person who really, really wants to join our Pod Squad? So it's a lovely experience, and I'm just supporting Rick and saying do it because it's so much fun.
Briefly, Sarah had a question about time commitment. Is there a set amount of time you need to commit, or?
I don't know if that's detailed in the PDF or if, if it's worth calling out separately.
Beatrice,
it's contingent on the Pod Squad. People decide the cadence of the meetings and how much they want to do. Yeah.
Okay.
Anyway,
Rick, if you can't attach the PDF.
I did, I think. I did chat it. It's the last thing from me. Oh, maybe they went to, never mind. Let me do it again. It only went to Stephen Blackwell.
Okay.
But I will attach it. Stephen has it, but I will attach it again. Thanks.
All right. All right. Let's see what's next. Oh, Chris Moyer. Chris Moyer and his Tech News Roundup, which is very, very valuable.
All right. Shall we begin?
Begin.
All right. Let's share that desktop. Actually, let's make sure it shares in the right place here. All right. Perfect. So since this is the first Tech News Roundup of 2026, I was feeling a little retrospective. So there's a little bit of a nostalgic feel to this one, and kind of a state of the union or state of play flavor in certain sectors here. But we will start off with someone you guys have never heard of. His name is James Moylan, or was James Moylan. He just passed away in December. But I thought he was noteworthy in UX history because he designed the little icon next to the fuel gauge in cars that said what side your thing is on. And so the story goes back in 1986, he was working at Ford. He stopped for gas in a fleet car that he was driving, and it was pouring rain. He, of course, parked on the wrong side for the fuel door. And after getting soaked by the rain, he thought of an indicator that would have helped. And so he went back to the office, drafted this document that we are looking at on April 17th. A product convenience suggestion, he called it. It has a little sketch on the bottom there as here's how I see this thing working. And 7 months later, he heard back from the director of interior design, and he said that because of his memo, an arrow would be added to the dashboard. So that is, I guess, since been known the Moylan arrow, and he passed away on December 11th at the age of 80. So thanks to him, there you go. And then the other sort of passing was that MTV Music went off the air. So after 40 years, they started in 1981. Paramount Skydance has been slashing costs since their merger in 2025, and these niche channels were the first to go. So MTV went off the air on New Year's Eve. Sad to say. And their final song was Video Killed the Radio Star, which was the first song that they launched on the channel back in the 80s. So a nice full circle moment. And then I thought this was a really nice recap. This was on x.com, so the URL is at the bottom here. Is welcome to 2026 and sort of what's going on in AI. And as we get into this, I have a few slides on the AI sector, and I want to we've talked about this in the past, but this notion of jagged intelligence that LLMs can be really good at some things and not so good at other things. And there's also the resulting applicability. They can do some things. So one thing I thought was interesting here is that Claude was successful in monitoring and managing the environmental conditions of a tomato. So Claude is now good at growing plants, and so you could have your own little planter bot being run by Claude Code that keeps things watered and so on and so forth. Other stuff in this recap was Adobe researchers. Adobe, you don't hear much about them in the AI space because there's so much loud news coming from other quarters, but Adobe is doing some interesting stuff in AI. And they just formalized an information theoretic approach for discovering concepts from raw experience, allowing models to understand that definitions like planet are fluid structures rather than static database entries. As far as, we talked a little bit about environmental impacts and data centers. The news here is that the physical plant of intelligence is doubling. So XAI now has 450,000 GPUs online, with construction underway to hit 90,000 by Q2. Goldman Sachs is financing 5 gigawatts of private power campuses in Texas, using gas turbines to bypass the grid because it's taking too long to get provisioned with power. Morgan Stanley warns of a 44 gigawatt US power shortfall in 2 years by 2028. And so as a result, financial capital is merging with silicon. These are hugely expensive facilities, and so private equity is jumping in. They're looking at launching a cloud business to lease chips directly to developers, backed by a $10 billion fund. And then later this year, OpenAI, SpaceX, and Anthropic are all supposedly planning IPOs this year. And then this sort of touches on the conversation we just had in terms of how capable is this technology. Dave Knight, alert reader Dave Knight, sent this to me and said, hey, you might want to think about reporting this. And so I noticed the date on this, January 5th of 2026. So this is purporting to be, new reportage. And the takeaway is like, this is a dud, nothing to see here. So if you read the article, it quoted a study done by Meta, the Model Evaluation and Threat Research Organization, and that was done almost a year ago in February to June of 2025, back in the days of Claude 3.5, 3.7 Sonnet. But this is dated today. It's like, here's, what the state of things is, and it's so far out of sync. And I guess the takeaway for me is that the news cadence is so fast now that you cannot be paying attention to legacy media. You have to be looking at social media. X seems to be where a lot of the stuff is happening in terms of specific announcements and things going on in the space. So if you want to stay current on AI, you need to watch or read X. So this happened 2 weeks ago, December 26th. That's 14 days ago, I think. Andrej Karpathy, for those of you not familiar with him, he was the director of AI and autopilot vision at Tesla. He's a co-founder of OpenAI, founder of Eureka Labs. He's a giant in the world of AI. Most programmers know who he is. He's held in high regard by the programming community. And then he posted this the day after Christmas. And it's worth reading, but here's a guy who is a huge force in the community, and he's like, I am underwater. I'm completely behind. And I thought these last two sentences here were amazing to read. He said, clearly some powerful alien tool is handed around, except it comes with no manual. Everyone has to figure out how to hold it and operate, while the resulting magnitude 9 earthquake is rocking the profession. Roll up your sleeves to not fall behind. And he gets into some details about, this, it's a new layer in the programming stack. You have agents, sub-agents, prompts, context, memory, et cetera, in addition to all the other stuff that you had to be aware of to consider yourself a programmer. And he's like, you're just getting run over by this train. And so he wrote that. It was an amazing thing to see from a guy like him. And Boris Cherny, who's the guy who wrote Claude Code, he's the current lead at Anthropic. He responded the same day with a wild anecdote here. He was talking about, he's like, this happens all the time here. He's like, we were recently debugging a memory leak in Claude Code, and I started approaching it the old-fashioned way, connected a profiler, trying to look through heap allocations and figure out where the leak was. And his coworker was looking at it too, and he said, just ask Claude to make a heap dump, read the dump, and look for retained objects. Claude one-shotted it and put up a pull request. And he's like, this happens every week. So it's kind of mind-boggling to think that we have to unlearn our old habits and approaches that we, have probably developed over the course of years. Um, and he points to this. He's like, newer coworkers and even new grads that don't make all sorts of assumptions about what the model can and can't do, our legacy models and our habits are able to use the model most effectively. It takes significant mental work to readjust to what the model can do every month or two as models continue to become better and better at coding and engineering. So the cadence is insane. And I emphasize that because that article that talked about this study done almost a year ago now is so far out of date that you can't get good intel from stuff that's that old. You have to stay really current in order to have an accurate sense of what's actually happening. He said, the last month was my first month as an engineer that I didn't open an IDE at all. 4.5 wrote 200 pull requests every single line. Software engineering is radically changing. The hardest part, even for early adopters, is to continue to readjust our expectations. And we're just at the beginning now. So basically, for those of you who are Ratatouille fans, anyone can cook now. You do not have to know code. You can write something in a language you've never touched before, and it'll do it. Igor Babushkin. He is I don't know if I'd call him a co-founder, but he helped start XAI with Elon. He responded, Opus 4.5 is pretty good. Carpathy responded to that. He's like, it's very good. If you aren't keeping up even over the last 30 days, you already have a deprecated worldview on this topic. And he's like 100%. And so this idea that I felt a little bit like in our debate, we're like, well, is it useful? Is it not? Maybe it's like that ship has sailed. It is genuinely useful. It is gobbling up more and more knowledge work in terms of its capabilities. And it's just exploded. And if you look at sort of when this all happened like the last 60 days, November, December, this thing took off. This is Boris again, the creator of Cloud Code. He's like, I created it back in September 2024. A year ago, it struggled to generate bash commands. We saw some hints that it might be useful one day. In the last 30 days, 259 pull requests, 497 commits, 40,000 lines of code added. Every single line was written by Claude Code in Opus 4.5. It consistently runs for minutes, hours, and days at a time. Software engineers changing, and we're entering a new period in coding history, and we are just getting started. And so then I thought this was fun. This is a GitHub repo called Call Me. And so basically you can start a software project running and then Claude Code will call you and say, hey, I had a question. Do you want to use SQLite or what? And he'd say, yes, figure out which one's better. It says SQLite's a good thing. He's like, great, do it and let me know. And so it's off doing this thing. And when it finishes, it can just call you and ask you again. So you can now code from your jog, which is kind of mind-boggling. In this one, so I don't know how many people here are Redditors. I'm sure some of you are, but there's a ton of AI subreddits on there. Claude AI is one of them. And this was someone who is not a coder. He said, I know everyone's been posting about Opus 4.5 lately. I had to share this. I am not an iOS developer. I'm a product manager. Never written Swift in my life. Had this idea for a simple routine timer sitting in my notes. Figured I'd try building it with Claude Code. Bang, he knocked it out in I think 3 days with not being familiar with the code and shipped it. It's on the App Store. So this is the kind of stuff that is happening now. The takeaway is this is moving incredibly fast. It's a landslide. Everybody's, things they know about how to code is being upended like every 30 days or so. And there is no such thing as low code anymore. It's instantaneous. You don't need to know any code at all. You can vibe code. For those of you who have yet to dip your toes in this, I would recommend downloading Claude Desktop. Check it out. There are no-code sites like Vercel or Lovable or what is it, Bolt? Tons of things where you can just prompt an application and it'll just pop it up for you. It's you really need to try to appreciate the change in coding as a profession, an occupation. Um, all of this craziness is not without its impacts. Some of you may or may not be aware of Tailwind CSS. Um, this guy, Adam Wathan, is the founder of it. I think he had a co-founder, but I think he generally wrote it. So Tailwind is wildly successful. AI coding agents love it. It gets downloaded 75 million times a month. That is success. But the business model wasn't right. They had paid offerings and templates to help people use it, but when AI developed a facility with the technology, nobody needed that stuff anymore. And so no one needed the paid offerings where they actually earned their revenue. It resulted in a 40% drop in traffic and 80% revenue loss. And they had to lay off 75% of their team. So this is an audio post on X on January 7th, and the guy's basically, uh, you know, as low as you can be, just, shouting out all the members of his team he had to lay off and how good they were. And a lot of founders were like walking the journey with him. There was a YouTube video sort of getting into all the stuff that happened, and there was a huge outpouring of support for Tailwind. And all these companies started sponsoring him. And so, in the matter of 24 hours, he went from, completely going under and was basically rescued by the founder community. And they've launched a sponsorship program for Tailwind, and they seem to be out of danger now. But this is the kind of impact that agentic coding can have. You can completely bypass any sort of knowledge aids or, training, documentation, things like that. I mean, you would need documentation to train the agents, but things that have been traditional crutches to help people do code are completely irrelevant now in this sort of new world. So that's the AI coding news. This is getting back to a story we had talked about, I think a couple of months ago, about the flock cameras. They're posted at Lowe's and Home Depot and stuff like that. And the Border Patrol people were using flock cameras to chase people down, figuring out where they were by reading their license plates and surveilling them that way. And this happened on December 19th. The city in Staunton, Virginia decided to terminate their contract with Flock Safety for license plate readers. And they are just the most recent in a long line of municipalities that are saying, you know what, we don't like the privacy aspects of this. And so these are all the contract determinations as of December 2025. So there is a flock backlash happening. There's a website called Deflock Me. A guy named John Padfield has a YouTube channel called Business Reform. He's been tracking a lot of stories involving flock safety. If you want to check out the YouTube link at the bottom there. Next trend for 2026. I mean, this has been happening for a while. Everyone's familiar with surge pricing and things like that, but this seems to be moving to the next level. So I'm sure everyone here has had the experience of searching for something online, and then when they think about it and they go back later and the price has gone up because they know you're interested now. This has moved from the online world to brick and mortar stores. And so this is a Reddit post about somebody saying Target is no longer pricing certain things in their store. So you notice here's what used to be called a price tag, which now doesn't have any prices on it at all. If you have also taken the price check scanners out of the stores and say you have to use your app now. But if you use the app to scan the tags, you get a message that says scan at checkout, with the goal being that it's inconvenient to put it back if you don't like the price you're giving it the thing. So Target is doing this. I don't know of other retailers that are doing this, but if anyone does, feel free to throw that in the chat. And then speaking of algorithms, um, betting platforms, especially on sports betting, have taken off. They've been in the UK for a long period of time, but MGM has betting apps and stuff like that. So they're all over in the US now. And The Economist last month did an interesting article about the battle to stop clever people from betting. And so the author of this article is a person who
Go stupid people.
yes, is a person who has good data analytics chops. And he has found that because they have so many, the scope of the betting opportunities is so broad that they can't get accurate odds on every single thing. And so you might find a badminton tournament that doesn't have good odds calculation. And so he's really good at finding places where the advantage is to the better. And so this article gets into all the ways they figure out who is what they call a sharp, a gambling sharp. And to shut them down, they'll either limit their bets and say, sure, you can bet, but you can only bet for like a 1% upside, or we're going to restrict your bet to say $100 or something like that. Interesting article, but basically algorithms are running our lives is the takeaway. That's happening at Target. That's happening if you like to gamble online. And I'm sure we're going to see more of that, not less of it going forward. Shifting gears completely into some tech medical news. I thought this was a remarkable story. Researchers have found a molecule called nicotinamide, I guess it is. I'm not even going to go for it anymore. NAD plus. It's cellular energy, and well, the upshot is for over 100 years, researchers have considered Alzheimer's disease to be irreversible. And so research, up to this point has focused on preventing or slowing it rather than trying to cure it because they didn't think there was a cure. Um, this new research shows that it is reversible. And so the research paper is proof of therapeutic reversibility of advanced Alzheimer's disease. And they did this in mice. They were able to restore NAD plus homeostasis and reverse the formation of the plaques that form in the brain. Um, the, it reversed the DNA damage, it reversed the neuroinflammation. And so, um, for people who have this disease, this is a real, I mean, we're quite a while from human trials yet, but this is a sea change in the prognosis for this disease going forward. So that's a nice thing to look at for 2026. Um, the Justice Department seized a web domain and a database that was used to siphon money off of American bank accounts. It's weird. What they did was use search engine advertising. So they bought fraudulent ads on all the search engines, including Google and Bing and so forth. And the ads were designed to closely mimic legitimate sponsored links from various banks. And then users who clicked on the ads believed they were being directed to their bank's website, but were instead routed to counterfeit pages run by these criminal organizations. And then when the victims entered their login information, malicious code embedded in the fake sites captured their credentials, and then boom, their money gets siphoned off. So it was nice that they seized the domain, login. They found login credentials for thousands of victims, and we're continuing to support the fraud operation as recently as November 2025. So that got shut down. That's a good news. MongoDB, Claris Studio runs on Mango. There was a Mango bleed flaw, which can leak the MongoDB credentials, which is a bad thing. It stemmed from how MongoDB server handled network packets processed by the zlib library for data compression. Researchers at an organization called Ox Security said that the issue was caused by MongoDB returning the amount of allocated memory when processing network messages instead of the length of the decompressed data. And so a threat actor could send a malformed message claiming a larger size when decompressed, and that would cause the server to allocate a larger memory buffer and then leak credentials into that buffer when it got sent back. So a little complex. The public exploit was released as a proof of concept and dubbed Mongo Bleed by an Elastic security researcher, Joe Desimone. And this has been patched. So basically, if you have not patched your MongoDB lately, you should. Cambridge Analytica, that happened years ago. And there was a lawsuit from shareholders about this, saying that the legal costs incurred from the repeated Facebook privacy violations should be reimbursed by the people who caused it. The Federal Trade Commission fined Facebook 5 billion, and the shareholders said, "This isn't our bad. You guys should make us whole." The parties did not disclose details of the settlement. Um, And it said that Mark Andreessen, who is the founder of Netscape and is a venture capitalist, he was a defendant. He was scheduled to testify last Thursday. They sued Zuckerberg, Andreessen, Sheryl Sandberg, holding them liable for the billions of dollars in fines. And so they came up with some kind of settlement. And Zuckerberg was going to take the stand last Monday and Sandberg on Wednesday. And so they were basically playing a game of chicken, waiting to see if anyone would fold. And then when it looked like they were going to have to take the stand, they paid up. So sadly, we don't get to find out the interesting discovery that I'm sure would have resulted from that. But anyway, that is over. This is just an interesting technology that I thought was fun because I'm geeky. Um, a magnetic cloak, for those of you not familiar with it, diverts external magnetic fields so that to an external observer, the object appears to be absent or invisible. The idea has been studied for years, but most implementations have been limited to simple geometric forms like cylinders or spheres. This study marked the first demonstration of a process to accommodate irregular real-world shapes, like, say, a car or something like that. Interesting study. I would check it out if you're geeky. Graphene supercapacitor, the new material is called multi-scale reduced graphene oxide, MRGO, created from graphite, totally abundant resource. So you're not looking at rare earth materials or things like that a lot of battery technologies use. The researchers incorporated it into pouch cells, a type of rechargeable battery packaged into a thin, flexible laminated foil envelope instead of rigid material, so it's flexible. They published their findings September 15th in the Journal of Nature Communications. Oops, and that's it. That is the show.
Wow, a lot of information in today's world. Thank you, Chris.
Sure.
We're going to pivot to Dave Knight, who tells us sales are oxygen. We could all use a breath of fresh air right about now. Not has anything to do with Chris. I mean, the world situation. So
thanks, Lynn.
Give us oxygen, Dave.
Hi, everybody. In doing some research, let's get my camera going there. Here we go. In doing a little bit of research, I popped around in AI, and just kind of fun for the group to know that regarding our group, I found this little nugget, which was kind of fun. So as of 2026, FMDiSC is widely recognized as the largest, most esteemed professional Claris developer group in the world. So I thought that was fun. Anyway, sales are oxygen. And why do I use this metaphor? Because they become critical when you don't have any, right? They're only important when there isn't any in that respect. So I want to talk about this. And I'm going to tell you just a little bit about me. Most of you guys know me, President and CEO of ACD, but some stuff that you may not know about me. I'm a family man. I got a wife, Deborah. She's an animation recruiter. My daughter, Katie, getting her master's degree in early childhood education. I come from a music background, so I've always been a music geek with varying hair displays. I was in the high school band as a horn player. I was a radio DJ during college, and then became a record producer and recording engineer for about 20 years after that. So I've always been around music, and no, I haven't always been bald. Also, wife and I are dog fosters. Over about 10 years, we probably helped house about 60 dogs. So we almost always have a couple of rentals, if you will, knocking around our house. Um, I'm one of the OG, one of the original gangsters of FMDiSC. We started FMDiSC in my office about 27 years ago, along with Bob and a lot of the old school people here. So I've been around for a long time in this community, been a speaker at I've done about 25 developer conference and engage sessions, 50 or so developer group meetings, lots of business conferences as well. I'm a huge small business advocate. I'm the guy that when you drive down the road and you see a kid with a lemonade stand, I'm going to stop. I love the thread of a small business and the spark that leads to them. I've been involved in a number of groups. I was the vice chair of small business for the city of Burbank. In the Chamber of Commerce. So again, I'm just a real aficionado. I've worked with a lot of people in this community with their business challenges in the FileMaker world. And again, I'm a sales nerd, so you'll find out, yeah, there's a lot of things that most people don't pay attention to in the sales process. I'm a geek on this stuff. So anyway, I hope to bring some of that to fruition today. The session, just in broad strokes, we're going to talk about why sales are important. We're going to look at some marketing opportunities. We're going to talk about prospecting. We're going to identify some client motivations that you're going to want to latch onto. We'll walk through some execution tips and so forth. I'm going to talk about lust in the sales process. It's a really effective way to think about how you hook customers. And again, there'll be some miscellaneous tips scattered throughout. I've got, less than an hour to do this, so this is not meant to be a boot camp, if you will, but just rather some good things to possibly think about as you try to sell your products and services. Sales are important. Why? Because tech, guess what? If you're an AI genius and you don't have any sales, you're broke, right? Your business has no money, you have no income, your personal life starts to go downhill. I want to buy a new computer. I want to go to that chat GPT conference. I want to be able to hire an additional staff member. You need income for all those things. And so sales becomes, again, it's that oxygen for your business. One of the other things, if you get good sales, chops, you can help control your destiny. You have a gas pedal that you can reach for and blip the throttle when things are getting quiet or back off when things are getting busy. So having good sales skills can help you on that front. When you get new sales, it's an opportunity to push you into new skills and relationships. Guess what? The new client needs EDI integration or needs to have their accounting system talk with a MailChimp thing. Again, you may find yourself having to reach for new tools, push yourself into new directions. For me, also, some of my favorite people in the world are clients or colleagues I've met in public relationships through my business. It's really great to get a fresh cache of people coming in every once in a while, new personalities, new insights, new ideas. So it's really good and healthy. And of course, it helps you diversify. I want to get some financial diversification, different industries, different regions. One example, as I've told you, we're in Burbank, it's the media capital of the world. A number of years ago, probably 50-60% of our work at one point came from the media industry. We have backed down on that significantly over the years, and there's been some hardship in that industry. And because we've diversified, we do a lot of manufacturing and service-based businesses and things. It's really helped kind of flatten out any sort of shock that comes from one industry underperforming or things of that nature. You can also get some diversity in regions, right? Different parts of the country and so forth. So again, it just makes sense to help get a broader base and diversify your business in that respect. I also talk about crop rotation. There's a natural lifespan for businesses and or for FileMaker clients, right? Oh my gosh, this customer got acquired. They're now using Oracle. They don't need FileMaker anymore. Those things happen every once in a while. We just lost two clients in the last couple of weeks. One of them we've been with for 29 years, one of them 27. One of them actually, mom and pop, and they decided to kind of shutter the business and they're pulling the plug and hanging up their cleats, and that's okay. The other one went into an industry solution that's kind of the de facto tool set for their industry. So both of those are regional. But we want to basically add some new crops now, right? We want to turn that soil over and get some new seedlings in place and so forth. And so we're going to work on that. So the first part of the sales thing is marketing. They're sort of linked at the hip in some respects. And marketing is really nothing more than saying, I am here, right? It's building your awareness. And the digital tools that you can use to kind of help, obvious to most of us, website, a blog, newsletter, social media, YouTube videos, digital ads, things of that nature, right? So those are the sort of digital tools available to you. You can also work in communities, business communities, BNI groups, maybe chambers of commerce, tech groups like what we're doing right this second, meetups in other disciplines and complementary areas can be good. You can also be participant in events. Maybe you want to host webinars, attend trade shows, conferences. These are all sort of tools at your disposal to help build your awareness and show people that you are alive and carry these skills. Don't have to do all of these things. I don't know anybody that does all of these things really well. Pick what works best for you, right? So at ACD, just to give you an example, when you look at the red items, digital ads, trade shows, we've done those. We're not big fans. They've got some problems for us in terms of what we've done. In amber, doing blogs, newsletter, meetups, webinars, we participate in those on occasion, right? So those are in our annual process, but they're not forefront. The green items are the things that we have chosen to be strong at. So our website, we put a lot of effort into our website, a lot of design, a lot of careful wording. Our social media, I believe, I don't know for certain, but on Twitter, I think we're top 2 or 3 in the FileMaker community. LinkedIn, we're probably top 5. Instagram, I think we're number 1. So again, we've chosen to kind of hang our hat in those areas. Business communities, again, I'm on the board of several business groups and involved in a lot of startup groups in town, tech groups like what you're seeing right now, and of course conferences. We try to involve ourselves in technical FileMaker and business conferences throughout the year. So these are the tools that we've used to kind of raise our awareness, and those have helped for us. Now to prospect, to do that lead generation, to start, kicking up rabbits as you start hunting through the prairie there. What are some things to use? And one of the very easiest things that I try to promote is using your existing customers, right? There's that old axiom, make new friends, but keep the old. One is silver and the other's gold, right? The gold one is the existing friend or existing customer in this situation. New customers have 5 times higher cost to acquire than an existing customer. So that's a big barrier of time, cost, effort, and so forth, just to kind of compete with what you already have. You're 8 times more likely to get an existing customer to buy from you than a legacy customer. Another great reason, right? And just in broad strokes, those existing customers are going to have a higher trust. They're going to tolerate a higher spend, and you have the chance to make a faster close. Again, because of that trust, because of that relationship, because of what you've done in the past, and you're not having to work through all of that squirminess of gaining the acceptance with that new customer. There's also the axiom that a lot of people follow, which is that 80% of future revenue predominantly comes from 20% of your existing customers. So pay attention to your own book and your own accounts and try to see if that works out correctly for you. But it's an easy approach to again start getting those leads coming in and get some opportunities lined up. Another area that I really like to push, and I don't see a lot of my colleagues doing this in the community, but it's something that's worked very well for us, and that's using partners. They provide reach and endorsement, right? And the minute you start working with a partner, you've got access to their Rolodex of clients. You've got access to a much wider audience, number one. And number two, you've got instant credibility. You're standing next to somebody they trust. So you still have to work a bit, but it's an easier path than cold calling or knocking on doors or, popping out digital ads and waiting for the door to ring, right? So We use IT shops a lot. We have probably about 75 IT shops. We engage, I would say about a third of those are pretty active referral opportunities for us and partners that we engage with. Claris and Apple are great avenues. If you're watching Claris push out AI initiatives and so forth, and you've got some really good demos or you've got some really good solutions you've built, great opportunity to share those with Claris. Maybe there's a co-marketing opportunity for you. Apple, guess what? We're coming out with a brand new iPad. Go to the local store and go, hey, I've built some iPad applications for small businesses that have, sold 50 or 100 iPads to the local Apple store. I think we could work together and so forth. So you can piggyback on these larger organizations and try to target your offerings and your past successes in a way that shows them it can be good for them as well. Accounting and payroll companies, great opportunities. We work with them all the time. The accounting people are sitting here working with QuickBooks or Sage or something, and we tell them, sorry, there's a car alarm going off outside my office. So the accounting people are going, well, yeah, my client uses QuickBooks, and we say we've got much better time entry applications we can build than what you can do in QuickBooks, or we can handle inventory controls or CRM stuff. Let me show you what we can do with your QuickBooks customers and build operational systems that feed into it. Conversely, we can bring our accounting colleagues into conversations with customers that we're building operational systems with and go, hey, Sandy over here could help you with some of your accounting, setting up your chart of accounts correctly and so forth. So again, it's a great opportunity to kind of co-work on customers together. Marketing firms, web designers, really good partners, right? Web designers. Hey, we're going to build a big website for X client, and we're going to do the About Us page and the mission statement and all that. And you go, great, let us help you with the back end web app, the customer log on, the customer access portal, or some of the application specific pieces. And in that same capacity, if you're working on something for one of your clients, bring in a web designer, throw them the work that's not suitable for your shop. What we're really getting at is opportunities to share. And we also work with other dev shops. So small mom and pop FileMaker shop doesn't have access to the kind of skill set maybe that we have with API or some web application development or some SQL work or things that we have in our bag. So we've done an awful lot of either co-working, co-branding, but basically integration and working and partnering with other FileMaker shops or other technology shops to see where one shop can help the other in areas that the other might be stronger or weaker. Show them your craft, ask to see theirs. Let me sit down with my accounting colleague. Let me show her the kinds of systems we built, the types of things we can do. Let me ask to see what she's done and the kinds of impact she can make. To be a good partner, you've got to reciprocate. You can't just go, hey, get me some leads. You got to give them leads. You can do some reward or incentivizing as well. We've done a lot of incentivization with other FileMaker shops who have jobs that are too big or too complex. So that can work to your advantage as well. So you're moving into the sales cycle, and there's a number of sort of religions or various formal methods of sales that you'll see scattered around. MEDDIC, CHAMP, SPIN, these are all acronyms for sort of formatic and thematic sales processes. These are all designed to kind of help you get structure around how you sell. But in a generic sense, what they're helping you to try to structureize is how to qualify a lead, how to engage them in the sales process, and then, of course, how to close. So from a generic standpoint, we're really going to be kind of looking at those kind of stages. One of the structures that I like using, just because it's simple, is BANT, which stands for budget, authority, need, and timeline. Budget, do they have the money? Authority, does somebody have the power? Are the decision makers, are the stakeholders in the room? Are they going to be able to give us the go order? Need, do you guys have a problem? There's no reason to call us if you don't, right? And then timeline, how soon do you need this, and does it work with our schedule on our side? So before you start, before you have that sales meeting, do some prep, do some research. Go find out about the company, find out about some of the key people at the company, what's going on in their industry, what are the trends that you're seeing. Like I just said, I've had meetings with accounting companies recently. They're using AI like crazy. So I want to know that going in. I want to know what the environment's like, who the company is, who are some of the people, what are their stories. It's just going to help me make more relevant content and steer the conversation in areas that are going to be important to them. You can use AI to gather a lot of this information, right? You can go out there and do some ChatGPT searches on specific people, specific industries, and so forth, and learn an awful lot. And then collect your relevant success stories. Once you know a bit more about their industry, or maybe they sent you an initial email talking a little bit about what some of the things they're looking for. Collect some good success stories that are gonna overlap what their needs are going to be, so you have that in your back pocket. I also like to bring the right person on my team. If we're doing, music or entertainment, I've got that down pretty well. If I'm trying to court a new real estate company, I'm going to bring Chris on my team. If it's a fire department, I'm going to bring Joe. If it's manufacturing, I'm going to bring Jake. We've got different people on our team with various skill sets. So I want to bring somebody into the room that speaks their lingo a little bit, and make sure that when you're gonna do your meeting with them and do your pitch, you get the decision maker lined up. Nothing worse than the boss sending out an assistant, a secretary who's 22 and doesn't know the business and doesn't know operationally what's going on, and doing your big presentation or your sales pitch to them. That's a waste of everybody's time. So one of the other things to focus on, and this is throughout, this is sort of an overarching umbrella, capture the client motivations. Why are they talking with you? What are the things that are driving them? Is it generally productivity? We want to be more efficient. We have tools that are antiquated or disparate. Maybe it's compliance within their industry. Maybe they have security concerns. Maybe it's quality of life. We're working harder. We're leaving the office late. Everybody hates their job. Are those intangibles that we can latch on to? Hey, we're in a crowded field. We're in a competitive industry. We need a strategic advantage to give us a lift past our competitors. So these are things, better metrics, guidance. We want better steering. We want some visualizations. We want our data to tell us a story. Maybe we want to help improve the customer service of our company by giving more time to our clients, or giving them access to client portals or things of that nature. So these are just some samples of motivations, but your goal should be to listen for these in emails and conversations, anything where they start telling you why we're doing this, because you're going to want to use that in your presentations and stuff later. You want to know who you're selling to. Now, this slide right here is a little snippet, and I'm setting the stage for something later. And the reason why I talk about this, I'm an investor, a big Warren Buffett fan. If you don't know, he's one of the most successful investors of all time. He's got a great quote. He says, I try to invest in businesses that are so wonderful that an idiot can run them, because sooner or later one will. And so, from that perspective, what is he saying? He's basically going, there's a lot of really great companies out there, including Coke, which he owns an enormous share of, that make really bad blunders, that have people that make bad decisions and so forth. The takeaway of this is largely some businesses are run by idiots. Now, it's not that I'm trying to drag people down from a standpoint. It's for me to tell you this so that when you're selling to idiots or non-idiots, if the boss, if the decision maker, if those stakeholders in the meeting don't get what you're selling, you're going to cause confusion, maybe some ego bruising. You're going to make them feel bad. They don't understand what everybody's talking about. You're not going to get a sale. So when I'm talking to my brethren in the tech community, drop the geek speak. Don't use all those acronyms and jargon. Oh, we're going to use an API with a curl script that's going to pull some JSON. No, We're going to connect your accounting system with your operational system. Your time entries are going to go right into your payroll system. Use English. Make sure that everything is very, very clear. Just like design, everything should be as simple as possible, but not simpler. So keep your geek speak on the back burner. Every once in a while, you're meeting with an IT director, and he's going to want to pull the conversation into a deeper technical. Absolutely fine to do that, but don't start that way. Most of the decision makers get mired in this stuff, and it's going to hurt you rather than help you. So you get to breaking the ice. You're meeting with that client. What I like to do, identify who the champions and the stakeholders are. Stakeholder, the decision maker, yes, no person. They've got the budget, they've got the ability to give us, what are we looking for? Authority, right? The champions are the people who are going, oh my gosh, I've got this great idea. We need a FileMaker app. It can help us do X, Y, and Z. You want to find those go-getters. Those are the people you want to latch on to as well. So as you're talking, engage those people. Ask them about their business. People love talking about their business. What do you guys do? We buy widgets, we sell widgets, we service widgets, right? Let them tell you a little bit about themselves. Capture all this information, right? How did you start? Oh my gosh, my dad started the business back in the 40s, or we started this in our garage and we've continued to grow and we acquired another business and now we do both manufacturing and service. You know what you want to hear the path on how they got to where they are. You want to hear things like, what's the size of your staff? Oh, we've got 75 people in the field. We've got about 50 people working remotely, about 25 in the office. What am I doing? I'm listening. I'm writing this stuff down. I'm thinking iPads out in the field. I'm thinking wide area network performance is going to be critical for those remote users. I'm thinking dashboards and reports for the people in the office, perhaps. So start collecting the insights that you're getting from this conversation and ask them about their departments, the locations, the facilities, how big are you, how spread out are you, different languages, different exchange rates, et cetera, et cetera. You want to learn these types of things because it helps you get a better picture of who they are. And this whole exercise is to go, great, you're running this business. Tell me of the tools you're using. We're using Google Docs over here. We're using QuickBooks over here. We're using some spreadsheets, some ad hoc spreadsheets over here, so forth. You want to hear what they're using to get acclimated to what their what their tool picture looks like. And this whole exercise is to be empathetic. You want to listen. You want to compliment them. My goodness, what a great business you've started. This is fantastic. Look at how well you're doing with some fractured tools and so forth. So this is really good, informative, and it brings them into the conversation. Next, I like to move towards, what are your problems, right? What are your struggles? What are you finding problematic in your operations? This is that need part of the BANT acronyms. And sometimes you need to coax examples. You want to get them nodding to things that we know are pretty consistent. Hey, are you still using a lot of paper? Do you have a lot of app sprawl where you're using 10, 12 apps to run your business instead of a smaller, more concise number? Are you doing a lot of data entry over and over and replication? Maybe you're looking for more automation. Maybe you're looking to tap into some AI benefits. Maybe you'd like to have better reporting, some visualizations, analytics, steering controls, integrations. Your website talks to your operations, talks to your accounting. So these are all sort of similar things that we see over and over with customers, and you guys have more than what I'm putting here. But these are the things you want to kind of pull those problems out in front of you. And once they give them to you, recap them and empathize. Wow, sounds like you've got 12 apps, you're paying for a lot of subscriptions, you're using a lot of paper, you're entering data a lot of times. That must really be terrible for you. I can see how frustrating this is. You want to be their ally in the pain that they have. And right now, you want to focus on the problem, not the solver. Not, hey, I know how we're going to fix this, but just listen and sympathize a little bit with them to go, hey, I get this. You're not the first client we've heard that uses too much paper. You're standing with a lot of people, and so I don't want you to feel bad. I want you to know that we've heard this before. You're not unique in this ugliness of your business, right? So we've extended courtesy. We've let them do the talking. We've learned about their business. We've heard about their problems. It's now completely reasonable to go, I would like to tell you a little bit about us, right? So this is your opportunity to establish your expertise, how many years you've been in business, some of the clients that you've worked with, some of the industries, some of the credentials. Maybe you've got some uh, certifications or accolades or things of that nature that are going to help you again feel significant and established. You can also start to talk about that perfect client and hopefully using examples that lay over the cross of the problems you've just heard. Oh, we love working with small to medium businesses who are using too many apps and find themselves still stuck, pardon me, in the paper world. So it's a great way for you to kind of show that there's a match being created here. Your whole goal is to create confidence. So I'm going to give you an example. ACD, we put a lot of attention into our sales tools. This is something we used a couple of years ago, but I want to give you an actual example of what we do when we're sitting at that point in the meeting with a client. So we're going, hey, we're Angel City Data. We are a Claris Platinum partner. Hold on a second. My screen is getting a little messy. Um, we are FileMaker certified in all available versions, again, from a couple years ago. We've won 3 excellence awards over the years. One was for outstanding tech support, one was for partner of the year, and another a few years later was for design of the year. And in the city of Burbank, there's 12,000 businesses. We were Small Business of the Year a few years ago. So I'm establishing credibility both in our technical community, also in our physical community, right? We've been in business 20 years, done 2,000 systems, 120 industries. And we've got a rock solid team and lifelong customers. So again, this exercise is not just patting on my back, it's to tell that client we've been around, we're good at what we do, we've got credentials, we've got certifications, we've got awards, et cetera, et cetera. I want them to feel like what comes out of our mouths is significant, right? We're problem solvers, and we've done it for a long time for a lot of people. So now we can pivot on to now that I've got their certification. You've seen my medical diploma on the wall. Now I can tell you what's wrong with you, right? This is where we get into that solver role. So I want to recap their problems. Okay, you're using too much paper. You got all these different apps. None of them talk to each other, data replication. And then I want to show and outline some relevant success stories that show how we solved for those in the past, right? And this is really getting that trust. I'm diagnosing problems that are relevant to them. And I can then start to describe the benefits, right? I can say, hey, this one saved them $3,000 a month on paper. This one turned their sales process into a 2-day affair instead of a 7-day affair, et cetera. So I can really get into the meat and some of the deliverables on some of the success stories that I know are going to resonate with them. And then project their problems being solved. So let's use our imagination and say 6 months from now, imagine that all your paper's gone, that your systems now talk to each other, that now you've gotten rid of 4 or 5 of these little pillar apps that really just serve one purpose, and they're all integrated into a FileMaker system. And so I'm planting the seed of what things could look like. I'm trying to get them sort of anxious about what the future looks like. And so this is where we're turning that sales trust into sales lust. I want to get that emotional connection with them. I want them to start really dreaming about what working with our team is going to be like. So I went online. It was funny. I was just kind of poking around, and I actually found this clip that was as good as anything I could imagine in terms of how to personify this. A deep personal bond formed when a brand triggers feelings like joy, nostalgia, or empathy that make customers relate to the product beyond features and that create loyalty, trust, and advocacy by creating memorable human-like experiences. So getting this lust into your sales process is an art. And I can tell you in technology, most companies do it really poorly. Apple gets lust into their ads, right? They go to their website, look at the pictures, glorious pictures of their product. Apple's great at it. Microsoft is not good at generating sales lust, right? Those memorable things that you walk back and talk about or that stick in your brain. Some people are really quite good at it, some are not. For us, we're a design shop. We have a very high design component. I want to make sure that we're going to plant the seed with some visual appeal. And one of the other things, another example I'll show you is how we generate empathy and quality of life. We found that's been really effective with some of our customers recently. So when we're in our presentation, we're going to show beautiful, bold design, right? We're going to show desktop systems that look really nice. We're going to show web applications we built that are going to trigger some desire. We're going to show tablets that applications that we've worked and even all the way down to the phone. I want people sitting through our presentation to go, we want something that looks like that. We don't have anything that looks like that. That's going to help us plant our seed. You could also do this with financials or with efficiency or graphs and scales. There's any number of ways to do it, but we're creating lust right now. Pardon me. So the quality of life one is a different one. We have a customer that when we began working with them, we met with the general manager. And she told us, her name is Gina, and Gina told us, oh my gosh, we're using so much paper, I'm working so late, and I have these two boys, and I never get to see them participate in after school sports. I'm always working late, and it's really hard for me. I really want to see my boys do this. And we actually took a picture of her desk the day that we actually met with her. And we also took a picture of her desk a week or two after the system was in place. And Gina now gets to go watch her kids play in after school sports because we've made her life better. So this is one of those, again, the quality of life. I'm creating lust to go, oh my gosh, how many nights do I spend working late at the office? How many times am I coming in on the weekend? We're trying to tell a story visually that helps convey that, right? And by the way, I'm not looking at the chat window right now. So if anybody has anything, Lynn, do a shout out and so forth, and I'll be happy to pop in with stuff.
I will do that.
Budget and timeline, other parts of, again, that Bant graphic, the budget they have versus what they need. Sometimes you sit down with a client, you get to know their needs. They've got 10 grand and what they really need to spend is 25. So, obviously you have to work creatively to make sure that you can be a good fit. Excuse me. And so, that's where using things like the MVP approach, a minimum viable product, start small, build up, and construct effective plans moving forward that are going to be a good fit for what they have. Other times, I'm meeting with customers that have a budget whim versus the app value. And what I mean by that, you sit down with some business and the owner comes in and says, and how much money did you guys see, that you wanted to spend on this and so forth? Well, we thought $10,000 or $20,000. And you sit there and go, we're going to, I'm sitting here doing the math. I'm looking at your system. I think we can save you operationally. We can save you $2,000 or $3,000 a month. This thing is going to pay for itself in the first year. That $10,000 isn't going to get you all the way there. But if I can show you that the return on investment is going to be very quick, let's talk about that whim of yours. I'm just throwing out a number, 10 grand. Let's show the value proposition of how, wow, if we can save you 3 grand a month, this is 30, 40 grand a year we're going to save you very quickly. So let's maybe adjust our expectations if possible so that you have a meaningful budget to work with and do your magic. The timeline really is, again, it's one of the components. If they need something tomorrow and it's significant and costly and complex, that's not going to work. You also have to look at your own book of work and juggle, what are the demands I have on existing customers. But the time and the money thing go hand in hand. So it's best to, pay attention to both of them kind of concurrently. Um, One of the things when I talk about the timeline that I always focus on, we're going to save you 2 or 3 grand a month, let's just say. But if we wait 2 or 3 months, you're going to be flushing $6,000 to $8,000 down the drain, right? So let's not delay. The cost of delay, that let's move forward in a concise fashion now that we've got trust, we've got some lust, we've got some solutions and ideas and some budget laid out. So let's move, in an efficient fashion. Don't be afraid of adding a little drama, a little urgency to the sales process. It can be very good to get people to kind of go, great, we love what we saw. We've got a game plan. Let's get these guys in a room and get started planning this thing out. So you want that urgency, and there's a number of ways you can kind of push things forward. So you make that sales presentation. And you go, oh my gosh, I killed it. I did this really great presentation. Everybody was nodding. The boss was happy and so forth. You walk away and they go back about their daily business and things start to start to die on the vine. At ACD, if you go back into our kitchen, you look on the refrigerator, there's a sheet of paper and it's been there for, 10 years. Because I want my team to focus on this a lot. And you don't have to read it here. I'm going to just call out some of the big points. 48%, half of all salespeople never follow up. They put all this effort into the sales and then they walk away and wonder why the phone didn't ring. Only 10% of salespeople tend to follow up more than 3 times with an account. That's not enough. So when it comes to closing a sale, 2% of sales close at that first meeting. 2%, that's hardly anything. 10% close on the fourth contact. 80% of sales close on the 5th to 12th contact. You have to be persistent. For me, if I get a customer, the boss hasn't gotten back to me yet, or I'm waiting, hey, Jim, are you guys ready to go? No, we're still thinking about it. Uh, or we've got other budget stuff, or at the end of the year, or we're doing taxes or whatever. To me, until a customer says, no, leave me alone, Dave, we're not using FileMaker anymore, we hate you, until they give me that off sign, that wave away, I'm considering it a maybe. I'm considering it a lead. I'm going to follow up. I'm not going to possibly follow up every single week with somebody who I've been kicking around for 2 years. I may extend the sequence out every quarter, every couple of months, something like that. But until they tell me it's a no, it's a maybe as far as I'm concerned. Some tools, to help yourself, use tools to help your sales process. Use a pipeline application to help you track things. Things like opportunities or leads. I met a guy at a meeting, or I was talking to this man at the bus stop, or whatever. Pop those things in there. Keep track of your follow-ups, all of your deadlines. I need to get back to them with an estimate, or I need to follow up before the end of the quarter. Marketing schedules. Hey, we're doing a big Twitter blast next Friday, et cetera, et cetera. Keep track of all this stuff. You can use a database. You can use HubSpot or Salesforce, or pardon me, or build your own in FileMaker. But get into the rigor of doing it consistently and make it a routine. If you call me 10 o'clock on Monday mornings, I won't answer the phone. We're in a pipeline meeting. Our sales team gets together. We go through all this. Some miscellaneous tips just to get us across the finish line. Artificial intelligence. We just had one of our most vibrant, meeting sessions ever on this. It was fantastic. Most of the world doesn't understand it, doesn't understand what it does, how it can work. There's a lot of fear. Compare AI to traditional methods. Let me show you how this dashboard can automatically track sales numbers in a way that would be more difficult for a traditional report. So you need to basically show them what those equivalents are, right? Because it's brand new and you need to make it a little more comfortable. I think it's a great idea to produce practical demos that show the capabilities. We've seen Mark LaRochelle did a really good job of it on a Claris webinar a few months back. Matt Navarre on our FMDiSC board was doing this at one of the last meetings where he showed all these great little nugget files that just show really good common business practices where AI is brilliant. Another approach, phase next. Hey, we just finished the project. Remember those features we omitted? We pulled a few things off. Let's start talking about phase two. Let's talk about when we can get started with that. New capabilities. Hey, I noticed you've got all those people in the field using clipboards. I'd like to see them get into iPads. I think we can have that interact with your job tracking system. Other miscellaneous tips, cross-pollination, hugely effective for us. We actually put on events where we show what we've done for customer A to C, D, and E. But to show a customer or talk to a customer, you should see the system we just built for Acme. There's a lot of professional curiosity with CEOs who want to know what everybody else, they all work in their little bubbles. And if we've got good NDAs and the capability of showing sample data in a system that we built, and it's got some componentry that can be used by them, it's a really great way of getting, again, a little jealousy, a little keeping up with the Joneses that you can use to your advantage. Security is a great entree into additional sales. We noticed a few areas of concern in your business. There's been a lot of break-ins, there's some malware, there's some things that we'd like to do with your database to shore things up. Performance is also another big one. Oh, you've got all those remote workers. I think we can make process X much faster for them if we do a little work on that. Maybe the same type of approach for UI usability. I see some UI mods in your existing system that I think we could improve and help ratchet up efficiency and so forth. So again, these are just sort of little dibs and dabs of stuff to kind of help find a foothold into additional work with new or existing customers. Post-project selling, at the end of the project, you're done. Oh my gosh, it was great. Celebrate. Have a celebration event with the customer. You hear me use the term victory lap all the time. Hey, we just finished the project. Have a meeting with the decision makers, the primaries, the stakeholders, recap all those goals that were met. Oh my gosh, we're now using way less paper. We've reduced your app count down from 12 to 4. We've got way more efficiency, et cetera, right? You want to show that. It's also great to compliment the team members. Hey, Sally at your company was great in the accounting department at helping us do the integration with QuickBooks. John on our team did a real bang up job on the interface. We really like where he went with that. I hope you guys are enjoying it. Again, it's a great way to kind of give accolades to everybody involved. And then pivot into we have some phase two items I think we're all really excited about. And oh, by the way, I see that the marketing department has been using Google Sheets for a lot of their work. I wonder if you might be interested. So again, call out those things that you've been collecting, those motivations that you've seen, your learnings of what you've been exposed to with the company, and then propose an ongoing relationship, a quarterly business review where you sit down with a customer, maybe, your top accounts, maybe 4 times a year, maybe 2 times a year, but sit with them and go, how's your business? How's your industry? Here's some stuff that we've got that we've built for other people you should see. I know I've talked with Kathy in marketing and they are struggling with X, Y, and Z. It's an opportunity to pull all those things together, listen to what they're struggling with, find new approaches, and also pull from that back catalog of things that didn't get done the first time around. And the whole purpose of this is to encourage sort of a constant innovation culture at your clients. So they're always looking to you for, hey, Dave, what do you got now? Or what have you guys been working on? Or we've got some new thoughts after this acquisition. You want to have them in this cycle where we're talking with your organization is always a good thing and is always relevant and gives you insights into their world and lets you share some really good success stories and interests that they may want to take advantage of. That is it. Thank you so much, and especially for this whole meeting has gone on a little bit long, but I just wanted to stop and see if there's any Q&A. And thank you again for your attention.
Thank you, Dave. That's tremendous. For those of us others out there beating the bushes for sales, have you noticed any trends recently of caution on the basis of on the part of customers, or are they going full speed ahead?
I've talked with a lot of other platinums. I talk with people at Claris. You know, economically right now, I think the country is in a bit of malaise, if you will. It hasn't been there other than again, you know, the market notes that we talked about, 7 or 8 companies have been thriving for the last, you know, year. And I think a lot of the rest of the country is in you know, flat is the new up, is what I'm sort of hearing from a lot
Yeah.
of, again, from a lot of people in the FileMaker community. I think that's been the general consensus and so forth. Not for us. We've, knock on wood, I see some headwinds coming, additional headwinds in this next quarter or two, perhaps. So we're going to get out there and beat the street and kind of do what we do. But last year was a banner year for ACD. So while others were, I think, struggling or kind of just holding on, I think we were able to make some really good headwinds and so or some headway, I guess I should say, in some things. But it's the funny thing is, you know, again, I'm as a business guy, um, we can talk about AI all you want, but if you become the most amazing AI person on the planet, but don't know how to sell and land customers and relate to them, I can tell you right now that if everybody started adopting what I talked about today and use that in their business for the next year, it's going to make a bigger impact to their bottom line than how much AI they're bringing into their business right now. Because
Hey,
it's going to accelerate AI, it's going to accelerate their FileMaker, it's going to accelerate the things that they've already got.
hey, Dave, I think this would be a fantastic presentation, exactly as you gave it to our sales folks. But I certainly wouldn't want you to do that without being compensated. So would you be interested if I can talk to Jahan and Alex and say, I saw something that Dave presented that I think our team would really benefit from just how you put the package together? Would you be willing to do that?
Sure.
Okay. I'll see what I can do.
Yeah, I talked with James Kim and Alex about this a couple of days ago. I just didn't know if they were able to
Okay.
make it. Yeah.
Yeah.
So
Okay. Yeah.
Hey, Dave, you mentioned demoing other systems to clients, you said, and as an aside, you kind of said something like, if you got a good NDA, can you expand on that just a little bit?
Yeah, I'm not gonna show. We have customers we're not allowed to talk about. Like we're not even allowed to acknowledge that we work with them, right? We have other customers that we have NDAs about, hey, um, you're not allowed to share our data, blah, 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 any of our, et cetera. So if I've got a customer, but a lot of our customers, we either don't have those stipulations or they're fine showing off an example of what we've done and so forth. So, if you're building something and you don't own the copyright, or if the copyright or um, the impetus of ownership of that product belongs with the customer, you got to ask them, hey, is it okay if I show example data using a sample of your system?
Mhm.
One,
Okay.
one of the other things I will also tell you, a mistake, I don't want to say a mistake, some refinement we've done to our sales process. We used to give demos of software. We do not anymore. We'll show screens, we'll tell a story. But we used to get into, hey, I'm going to tab between all these fields and show running this report. It's not that we don't ever do that. We will on occasion, but now we find it much more valuable to have a single screen or maybe a very small 15-second video that shows something, but not showing a live system where people have to be a little more patient to understand what's going on, as opposed to just looking at something nice with a couple of bullet points that tell what the takeaway or the benefits were.
Thanks.
Yeah.
Anyone else? Well, thank you, Dave. Thank you, everyone, for being here today. I'm going to wrap the meeting up. I have saved the chat, and I will post it on groups.io and on the meetup page associated with this meeting. So hope to see you all second Friday next month. Bob, I'll email you something I picked up earlier before you logged in. And we'll see everyone next month. God willing, and the creek don't rise.
Thanks,
Bye,
Lynn.
Bye.
Hi, guys.
Bye.
Bye.
Thank you.